for over a decade, and we used to be really close, but we slowly drifted apart. I should probably mention we are both men in our 40s. It's been great catching up with him, and honestly I really needed a friend, so it's just been great. He's got a long-term girlfriend and 2 young children. A couple of months ago we visited his house for the first time. He recently moved and we weren't speaking much before that, just an occasional comment on Facebook. And me, my 14-year-old son and 20-year-old daughter spent a few hours honestly just chatting about nothing, but in a good way, you know. While we were there I noticed that he kept looking at my daughter out of the corner of his eye. I never really caught him fully looking, so I thought nothing of it, especially as he has known my kids for over a decade. I didn't mention it to my daughter as I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable if it was nothing. A couple of months went past and we visited them again. He kept talking to my daughter and not really to me, which is fine, but it just seemed odd when my daughter has really bad anxiety, and she can't really hold a conversation, and she makes it clear when she's uncomfortable talking. He just seemed to keep looking at her and talking. Even if he was talking to me, he would just look at her. The final straw was last week. We visited them and we've been having a heat wave, so we were all dressed in as minimal as possible. My daughter in a thin pair of skirts and a t-shirt, my son in a pair of athletic shorts and a gym top, and me in a polo shirt and white chino shorts. Nothing unusual, just basic summer wear. When we were in conversation he would look at my daughter. When anyone told a joke he would smirk a little or give a small laugh depending, but if my daughter told something mildly funny he would really laugh to the point that even she would look awkward. He kept dropping out of conversation and just staring at her. I think she noticed it as well because she started to lean back in her chair to try to cover herself. Even though she was fine, she looked uncomfortable. Then when the sun set she put on a thick jacket and zipped it up. I don't know if he's just trying to be friendly and he doesn't know how to act, or if he's only inviting us round to stare at her, and if so then I don't know what to do. Yes, she's 20 but she's still my little girl, and this man watched her grow up. It just seems strange. I don't know if I should say something or just don't go around there again. Either way, I think it's the end of the friendship, which is a shame, but oh well. Update. Edits at the end of post update from my last post. I spoke to my daughter about the whole thing and wanted to know what she thought about it all because I didn't want to say anything if she didn't think it was odd. She told me that after the first time we saw him again, a few months ago, he had appeared outside her work after she finished her shift and asked if she wanted a lift home instead of getting the bus. She said that since he was a good friend of mine she trusted him and got in his car. On the ride home he repeatedly touched her leg and started talking about how much she's changed since he saw her last, before we all met up, and how much of an adult she looks now. He told her she's growing into her body like a good girl. My daughter said that she would walk the rest of the way home because she didn't want to put him out too much, but he insisted on driving her all the way. She said she kept moving away from him, but he was leaning to touch her knees. She said that at a red light not long before the house he gave her his mobile number and texted himself from her phone and told her to call him if she wanted a lift or anything else. Then when she got home she went to leave the car, but he grabbed her arm and asked her where his hug and kiss goodbye was. Not a new thing. He gives us all a hug every time. And when she leaned in he held her tight and whispered that she should call him. In the last few months since then he has repeatedly been sending her explicit texts and images and waiting outside her work asking her if she would like a lift home, even though every time she said no. She said she didn't want to say anything because she didn't want to upset me as he was the only friend I had. I feel sick thinking about this. This is my daughter. She's 20 but she's still my little girl, and I feel like I've put her in danger. I've messaged him asking him to stop contacting my family, and I've sent him the screenshots from her phone as reasons why, but he is messaging me asking me why when she is an adult, and the only sleazy thing he's done is cheat on his girlfriend, as my daughter never physically said the word stop, she just ignored him. I'm so angry at him and myself. Edit. I'd like to say thanks to everyone for the advice. Also, I've been getting a lot of mom comments, and although I appreciate the sentiment very much, I am her dad. Unfortunately, her mom passed away quite a few years ago, but I really appreciate that everyone thought I was her mom. It really is the biggest compliment to me. I must be doing something right. We went and spoke to our local police and they couldn't really help us as she had willingly gotten into his car. They did say that as we have spoken to him already, they could keep a file open, and if it continues then they would be able to take action. Honestly, it seems that they don't really care about it at all, which is alarming and upsetting. We sent the screenshots and an explanation to his girlfriend, and we've had some missed calls from him, but that's not our problem. We've blocked him on everything and have completely removed him from every social media. My daughter has spoken to her work and they have said that until she is able to find another job, they will ensure that at least one other member of staff will wait with her for the bus, and I will be meeting her at the first stop in our town to take her directly home on days I'm not working, and on days I am, then her grandparents will be picking her up. She is safe. I also had a lot of comments suggesting I get violent with this man. Although I do appreciate that a lot of people would be choosing the other route of resolving the problem face to face, I'm not like that. I'd like to be. I'd like to say that there's no problem I couldn't solve that way. But that's simply not me. It doesn't make me a bad dad either. I found another way to solve the problem and make sure my daughter is safe and comfortable. Thank you all for your help and advice. It's nice to find some support through the internet sometimes. Relevant comments. Commenter. It's not your fault, but you need to have a sit down and talk through the socialization for women to be nice and how to get past that mental block. This is something a lot of us go through, and it puts us in really awful situations. Help her understand that her safety is the most important thing. She doesn't have to be nice or put up with things like this. There's probably some very eloquent people who can speak to this topic on YouTube. It's not me, but I want to make sure she knows she doesn't have to take this shit for the rest of her life, even with the anxiety and desire not to rock any boats. OP. I've told her many times growing up that if she doesn't feel comfortable doing something, no matter what it is, then she needs to say that. It doesn't matter if it upsets someone or offends someone. All that matters is that she is safe and comfortable. I'm hoping that she will be like this from now on, and I just hope that she knows I'm here for her no matter what. Also, there's an update to the post. Thank you for your comment. Get her a weapon. We're in the UK, so she's legally not allowed any weapons, including pepper spray. The only thing she is allowed is an alarm, which she already had anyway. We are looking into some objects which can be carried around legally or discreetly. Currently we are looking into a keyring, which is like a long sharpened stick, though there's not many places willing to ship them to us. I'm so very sorry to hear what you have been through, and I wish you well throughout your life. My stepfather murdered my mother before taking his own life. I'm overwhelmed, lost, and unsure of how to move forward. I know this doesn't sound real. I have my boyfriend and my best friend here. I've known this for about 2.5 hours. It still doesn't seem real. I don't really know what I want to accomplish with this post. But I swear it is real. It's 3:51 a.m. in Berlin right now. We were trying to finish watching the movie that we started before the police rang at my door. I don't know what to do. Edit. The police just called me. My stepfather killed himself. I wish I could destroy him. Right now I just feel empty. Edit 2. I don't even know why I'm posting here. I'm usually just a lurker. I guess I just want somebody to know. I feel like the whole world should know. My mother is the most amazing person, and she has always been my idol. I don't know how to feel. I'm in our apartment, and I feel like everything I see is her. My evening started so differently. Everything started so differently. I haven't slept yet. I don't know how I will. Though sleeping is usually my talent. Mom wakes me up every afternoon if she feels like I'm sleeping too long. Since I moved back in, during the COVID lockdown. Update. Hello. My last post got capped, so I made a throwaway account. It's been about 24 hours since the police stood in front of the door to my mom's and my apartment and told me that my mother is dead. I've cried so much today. I feel like it's been an ocean of tears, so much that I just feel empty now. I miss her so fucking much. It still just feels like a bad dream. This can't really be real. Her death was on the news, and I saw a picture of a body in a blue body bag being rolled into the back of a wagon. That is my mother. In that bag. Oh my God. I'm going to run down what happened again. Maybe this will make it more real for myself? I don't know. My boyfriend and I were in the park playing speedminton on Wednesday evening when my mom called me and told me she would be coming home. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said yes, not to worry about it, and my boyfriend was still welcome to come over if he liked. I told her okay, I would see her in a moment. We both went home and she wasn't there. I wasn't worried. My stepfather and my mom have been together for a while and they're very much in love, but they can fight a lot sometimes. They always make up very quickly. I tried calling her several times to know if she wanted dinner and sent her text messages, and texted and called my stepfather as well. They didn't answer. This wasn't so unusual either. I thought they just made up. I'm guessing by this time he had already stabbed her. I feel sick writing this sentence. The police showed up at 3 in the morning, informed me, stayed in the apartment while my boyfriend called my best friend, who rushed over with a taxi. Everything is kind of a blur from then on. I remember sitting down to write the Reddit post because I didn't know how to feel or what to do, and I guess I wanted to scream my pain into the internet void. At that point, my stepfather hadn't killed himself yet. He had taken his car up into the countryside where my mother has a tiny little house at the lake, which is her pride and joy, with her garden. Both of them went up there every weekend together. He killed himself there. The fucking bastard. I've never been so angry in my life. I loved him, he was a part of my family, we got along really well. Some part of me wishes I could strangle him, or scratch his eyes out. I just want to scream in his face, how he could do this to me. To her. My lovely mother. Fuck, she is such a fucking light, she is such an incredible person and we are so close. I told her everything. And not just because she's my mother, she is truly an absolutely amazing person. Everybody who met her loved her. I stayed awake until about 6 a.m. I smashed a few glasses, I cried a lot. We finished watching the movie. Today I had to call all of the people. My grandparents, her brother, her friends. I had to call my stepfather's children in the UK and tell them what happened. I can't imagine how hard it must be for them. My mother was the victim. Their father was the murderer. I feel so bad for them. I've gotten so many calls and messages from people who are offering to help me in any way I need, who cry on the phone and ask me if this is real. To have to tell people over and over again what happened really wrecked me. Especially my grandparents. My granddad, I don't know how he's going to get through this. He just kept screaming, no, no, not my mom's name. I have to go to the police today to give a statement, probably talk about their relationship. I have to be there in 4-2 hours and I haven't really slept yet. I can't really eat either. I just feel like throwing up, just thinking about food. I wanted to thank all of you for your comments on my first post. I know we don't know each other, that I'm just some faraway voice on a screen with a terrible fate, but I did feel better reading your hugs and encouragement. I will have to think about getting a lawyer. My dad is sleeping in the other room. We're going to have to figure out how to get here. Some part of me honestly doesn't see a point anymore. There's so much pain in my life. I've had so many bad experiences. I got through a rape and a drug problem and everything was on its way up. And now this. But I love my mom more than anything, and I can't disappoint her, and I'm going to need to be here for my dad and me. I'm sorry for the long text. I just feel like I need to get something out. I feel so lost and empty. I miss my mom. Update. Hello. I guess in some way I wanted to give you people an update on what has been going on with me. When I posted my first post, I was slightly drunk. It was the night the police showed up at my house and rang the doorbell, and I was confused. All of your messages from random strangers, helped me in some way. I'd like to thank whoever sent me that poem by Mary Elizabeth Fry. Do not stand at my grave and weep. We used that for the invitation to her party. And also Bianca, who painted that beautiful painting of her which she sent me by email. Thank you. The poem by Mary Elizabeth Fry. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sun on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. Also, fair warning, this might be quite a long post. This might trigger someone, and I've been writing this post over several days as more information keeps trickling in, and the picture of that night is becoming clearer and clearer. I think I'm also mainly writing this for myself. What happened that night, the 23rd of July, is just still so surreal. I'm sitting at my mother's desk right now, in her little office in our apartment that I grew up in Berlin. Her presence in some way is all around me. It has been 23 days since the police showed up in front of my door at 3 in the morning and asked if they could come in. Since my stepfather hung himself. Everything has been so confusing. It's all sort of a mixture between crying, screaming, yelling, throwing things, and just emptiness. I go through phases. Someone linked that famous post about grief, and God, it's so accurate. And it's really hard to cope. Since that night I haven't ever actually been alone. This is somewhat exhausting to me in some ways, but probably also very important. I'm going to go through the series of events and facts because I also want to set it right. Since in the media, since some of you found the articles online and connected the dots, there is so much false information, it's hard to believe. My mother and my stepfather were together for 8 years, and he's only been living in Berlin since then. He has children from his previous marriage, that is all I will say. I am my mother's only daughter. He did not call me and confess to what he did, as many report. But he called some vaguely mutual friend who he walks his dog with sometimes. This was sometime after 11 p.m. At this point he was already up at the summer house. It takes about 1 hour and 45 minutes to get up there. This means my mother had been dead for about 2 hours. It says so in the police report as well. The summer house did not belong to my stepdad, but to my mom. She poured all of the little money she had and renovated it by hand. It does not in any way belong to him. The police showed up at my mom's in my apartment late at night. They didn't know the address of where he might have gone and were also worried he might come and harm me since he had the keys to our apartment as well. I was watching a movie with a friend of mine. I posted on Reddit a few hours later. The news articles started coming out the next day, connecting my stepfather to a celebrity. I posted because I needed help. This celebrity and my stepfather are by no means friends. They are acquaintances and there is no reason for him to be brought into any of this. That was Wednesday night, Thursday morning. On Friday I was at the Landeskriminalamt, criminal police, and gave a 3-hour statement about them and their relationship. This next part is about my feelings and mainly about my mom. Feel free to skip it. Since then my whole world has been turned upside down. My mother, the person I honestly loved most in the whole world, was just torn from me. It feels like I have this big bleeding hole inside of me. I'm not crying all the time, sometimes I feel okay, but more like empty. My mother has been with me my whole life. The whole 21 years, and I'm not just saying this because she is dead. She is honestly the best mother you could wish for. She is goofy and caring. Her laugh is infectious. She has such integrity. She is the most animated person. When she tells a story, she will get up from the table and gesture all around. Her eyes are so shining. I think I might show some pictures of her, because I want people to recognize her beauty. I want the whole world to know she is gone. Because this is an honest and devastating loss to the world, believe me. She is so talented. She got her bachelor in art history in America. She has worked odd jobs all her life. She's always been a hippie. When I was little, she started working at this English language summer camp in Thüringen in Germany, and she used to take me there for many weeks with her, on a hill, on a farm in the middle of a giant forest. She's a magician in the kitchen. She can open the fridge door and magically make something out of leftover ingredients that nobody would ever think tastes good. Noodles and carrots, anyone? She likes to make everything herself. She would let milk go bad and make her own ricotta. I have 1,000 jars of her homemade chutneys and jams. She baked her own bread years before the pandemic. She made her own vinegar, her own syrups and alcohol, and her hot sauces are legendary. I used to come home and open the fridge door and I'd ask her which of the many bowls she had covered with little plates were edible and which weren't ready yet. Since she's dead, I have found so many started experiments of things I don't even know what they are. I wish I could ask her. There are so many things I wish I had the time to ask her. Writing this is making me cry again. At the beginning of the pandemic, March I believe, I moved back in with her and she ordered 14 different bottles of white wine on Lidl, and every night we'd drink one together while we cooked, and I'd write notes on the color and the taste, and we'd give it a 1-10 on the Lidl scale. She's one of the funniest people I know, and she is so forgiving. Even when I was younger, we would get into huge blow-up fights sometimes and we'd scream. But 5 minutes afterwards, she'd come into my room and she'd apologize and tell me she loved me more than anything in the world. We told each other we loved one another all the time, sometimes just randomly, and hugged each other. I'm so grateful for this. I would say we had a rare mother-daughter bond. I love her with all my heart. She has always been my idol, my role model. If I'm even half the person she is, as generous, hilarious, creative, emotional, forgiving, and understanding, I will be lucky. I see her face in front of me all the time. I can hear her laugh. Fuck, I'd really give anything for her to be with me right now. Anything. It really tears me apart. If it weren't for her, I would have probably been dead 2 years ago. She pulled me out of my dark holes. She loved me unconditionally. She isn't just my mother. She is my best friend. And I will never ever forgive him for taking her from me. Especially since more and more facts are coming out. End of emotional bit. It's important to preface that I knew their relationship, or to be more exact, I was the closest to both of them together. And it's important to understand that he wasn't some creepy, abusive, scary bad guy. I loved him. He was like a best friend to me. When he came into my mother's and my life, I took him in with open arms. I've confided in him. I've told him secrets. We've had running jokes. We made bets with each other that I usually won, and he had to pay up. He was my family. This makes me feel just as conned. I feel cheated. I feel like I've been blind. I've had bad fights with him as well, and I knew about their fights, but I didn't see this coming. Not even a little bit. I would never put my mother in harm's way. I guess this is why she must have kept things hidden from me. The murder happened in his apartment. They had separate apartments. And afterwards he drove his car up to my mother's country house that they both spent every weekend at. Hunting mushrooms, planning and building things, going swimming in the lake that's right in front of the door. This was their refuge, and I'm assuming this is the reason he went there. Since the day this has happened, I've always assumed he blew up about something. lost control, and he killed my mother while he wasn't clear-headed. This is what made sense to me. That he killed himself because he killed my mother. Because he didn't know how to continue. But the more time goes by and the more facts we uncover, we being my mother's friends and I, not the police, the more it seems it was the opposite. That he killed my mother because he wanted to kill himself. And that he was covering something up. Since the night the police showed up, they've been asking me if I could know where their laptops are. They both had a laptop, and both are missing. They found the empty cases, but they're gone. This sparked suspicion in us. His phone is gone as well, my mother's is not. The police gave it to me. Then there are the other facts. Trigger warning. Despite what it said in the media, she didn't have multiple stab wounds in her chest. There was only one very precise and very small wound that caused her death. He only let someone know what he did after he was up at the house. When he arrived at the cabin, he apparently parked normally, even greeted one of the neighbors. The pieces are falling into place. That this was cold-blooded. I don't really know why I'm writing all this down in a Word document and why I'm going to post it on Reddit, but I need to share. I feel so much hatred and so much anger. I feel it boiling underneath my skin and it keeps threatening to come out. I've smashed so much stuff. I've gotten so angry. Sometimes I snap and I scream at people, and other times I just cry and beat my pillows. And sometimes I'm very calm. I can still feel joy. And my mother has this amazing circle of friends that I've known my whole life and who are supporting me. I saw her body in the coffin, and I will never be able to get that image out of my head. She was so tiny, it breaks my heart. I've also slept 2 nights at the cabin, and in the dark every shadow looked like my stepfather. I've become scared and started locking my doors at night. Murder used to seem something so far off, something that happened to other people, in a different world, separate from mine. But now it's not, and I won't let him spoil her place, her house. I won't let him take that away from her and from me. I refuse. I just miss her. I miss everything about her. It hasn't been that long yet, and all I want is for her to hug me and say my name and say she loves me and that she thinks I'm an amazing young woman. I want her to cuddle with me in bed, which she did for so many years until I felt myself too old. I want to sit at the kitchen table in the morning with her and have her ask me what I dreamt about last night, and have both of us talk about our dreams. For her to talk with me about my story ideas and my poetry, and to talk with her about the book that she was writing and will never finish. It just hurts so much. I don't know how to ever get past this. She has always been the most amazing person I know, and I can't get over this. I don't know how to get over this. I feel lost. I feel like I have to grow up very fast now and carry her with me. There's so much more to tell. So much. But I should probably stop somewhere. I would appreciate all advice. Thank you for reading. Relevant comments. Commenter. It's 23:40 and now I just want to call my mom. I'll do that in the morning when I wake up. She's my only family since we cut ties with pretty much everyone else. Be brave and take your time to recover. I hope everything will be fine for you after some time and that you'll get even stronger after this terrible event. OP answer. Hi, you're in the same time zone as me. Please do this and tell her you love her. From me. Because I wish I could tell my mom lots of love. Commenter. Hello again. I commented on the original post because I went through something so similar. I want to thank you for the update. It couldn't have been easy to write. But more than that, I'm glad to see you on Reddit just to know you're still around. The part of this post that most struck me was you spending time in the cabin. I remember the days in my father's house after his murders and suicide so vividly, and looking back on it, I wish I hadn't gone there at all. Which leads me to this. You don't have to do things the hard way. You don't have to make things harder on yourself. When grief as raw and shocking as what you've experienced takes over, we sometimes want to swim in it, because at least feeling something is better than remaining numb, feeling hollow. But I want to lovingly and gently encourage you to make sure you're taking care of yourself. I also want to reiterate how useful a trauma-informed therapist can be. I was dead set against therapy after my father's crimes happened. I thought I could handle everything on my own. After all, I'd always been the strong one. I waited a year to find a counselor, and if I could change a single thing I did, it would be that I'd have sought out help sooner. I didn't really know how to ask for help at the time. It took me years to learn how, but it would have been immeasurably useful to have someone help me through all of that. Like you, I was in my 20s when my father killed his girlfriend, her daughter, then himself. That was 16 years ago. There is a life on the other side of all of this trauma and heartbreak, I promise. And the book I just finished writing about was finally handed in on the last day of July. Maybe someday it can help you, and others. I have thought of you many times since your first post. My offer to reach out at any time stands. Any time. Edited to add. Quite a few people asked about the book in this thread and via DM. It's with my agent now, so at earliest it would be out in a year. Books take forever. The title is We Run to Crush the Grass. Thank you for the interest, but please focus on OP. She needs the love and kindness of strangers. OP answer. You especially. You have helped me so much, Lisa. Thank you so much. You've been such a light in these dark times, advising me, listening to me, checking up on me since my first post, and listening to me complaining about my family. You're such an amazing person, and communicating with you has helped me so immensely. I send you so much love, and I will continue being in contact with you. I can't wait for your book. Comment. You must have inherited your mother's writing talent because your story about her was so beautifully told. I agree with the others who gently suggest you speak with a therapist trained to deal with trauma. They can help you with your anger and other feelings and thoughts as they arise, so you can be guided to a proper healing. My heart goes out to you, and, if you will, I'll pray for 1,000 healing angels to surround you. OP answer. The night the police showed up at my door, at about 4 a.m. it started raining even though it wasn't supposed to. I went outside on the street and I started praying to every god there was, even though I'm not religious. But in these moments it really doesn't matter. You just want something higher to help you. Thank you so much. OP added in this thread. Hey everyone. Imagine my surprise scrolling through Reddit on my living room couch this fine afternoon, when I see a little picture of my mom and me in my feed. Was not expecting that at all. And then to look further down and see all of these wonderful and heartfelt comments underneath. I couldn't believe it, and I actually started crying again. This is the reason I reached out back then, into the void, as I called it, at my darkest time, and Reddit reached back and gave me something to hold on to. When you lose your faith in humanity in that way, I needed the love that came from so many strangers all over, and the support. Yesterday was actually my birthday. I just turned 25, so it has been a bit over 3 years, and I can't believe that 3 years have passed. I can't stand to believe that much time has passed without her. Thinking about it makes it hurt more. I miss her so much. Thank you to everyone for worrying about me and wishing me well. I'll give a quick update, and one of these days maybe sit down and write something more out. I've been in therapy for almost 2 years now, and I have a wonderful therapist that helps me greatly. It took me a while to find her, and there was a lot of trial and error with former therapists, but she's amazing and I'm so happy I have her. She actually says that I have improved greatly. In a number of things, I'm a mess. Though my mother's murder is something that I've buried very deep down below in the darkness of my psyche, and we haven't quite reached it yet. I really hate my stepmother, and I don't know how to tell my dad about it without causing a big issue. I'm feeling very stuck right now. Hey, this might be a long one. I'm sorry. It is too long. I didn't read at the bottom. I really don't know what to do about my situation, and I don't have anyone close to give me advice, so I thought here I can maybe get some advice. I have an amazing dad who raised me since my mom passed away when I was 5 years old. He is my friend, my supporter, and someone who I want to be like when I grow up. When my dad first introduced my stepmom to me, I was 10 years old, and she was very nice to me, and he looked so happy that we met and hoped we could get along. They got married when I was 13, and I was so happy that my dad and I had a new member in our family. I thought me and stepmother were getting along until I think a few months after their honeymoon she told me one morning that we just need to pretend to like each around my dad, but when he is not here that I shouldn't bother her. Honestly, this shattered me, but I agreed because I didn't know what else to do. After that day, whenever it was just me and stepmother, she would say things to get to me, and I would just not say anything. I'm introverted and don't like confrontation, so I just took it and thought over time she would get over it, but it got worse. She would talk about my height and weight and say I was a funny-looking version of my dad. I hoped my dad would notice, but he didn't. He actually thinks me and stepmother are so close and she understands me. He looks so happy with her that maybe it's worth not saying anything and giving it time. This year my stepmother has started picking on me around my dad, and he has either joined in or ignored it. I have voiced that what she says makes me uncomfortable and hurts, but my dad says she is teasing and doesn't mean it to hurt me. Well, right now, I'm at my ends and I'm scared, I'm angry, frustrated at my stepmother and my dad. Dad was away for work and it was just me and stepmother at home. She had a party at home with a couple of her friends. I helped set the house up and cook dinner because Dad asked me to help out, which was fine. After they ate and just hung out, they were hanging out on the porch when I heard stepmother and her friends talking very loudly outside my window while I was in my room. Stepmother friends talked about how lucky stepmother was to have a nice husband and a house. When they mentioned how nice it was that I cooked for them, Stepmother told them that I was annoying and weird and she hated me and living with me and couldn't wait till I was 18 to kick me out. I was shocked that she hated me that much, but I didn't know why. TBH, I thought we were tolerating each other, but to hate me I must have done something, but I can't think of what I did. I've been kinda down since that day, which was 2 weeks ago, and I thought I was past the initial feelings, but at rugby training today I bursted into tears and my coach sent me home, so I drove to a beach and cried. I feel so much I honestly can't describe my emotions. I eventually fell asleep in my car. Now I'm here hoping I can get advice on how to talk to my dad about it, 'cause I'm scared about how he will react. I don't want my dad to be sad 'cause he does so much for me, but I'm not strong like him. I'm really struggling. My question is, how can I approach this conversation with my dad about my stepmother hating me? Or should I tell him at all? Too long. Didn't read. I heard my stepmother tell her friends she hates me, and I want to tell my dad about it but don't know how. Edit. Someone questioned my dad's age, and I'm sorry, but it was supposed to be 42, but I can't change it. Sorry. Thank you everyone that provided advice and kind words. It means a lot to me. I have read every comment and have an idea on how to approach this situation. I'm honestly terrified of the outcome being negative, but the encouragement and support are making this a bit easier to deal with. I'm going to talk to my dad on Sunday and show him this post. I hope it goes well, and I hope all of you stay safe and take care. Edit 2. I'm not sure what I am able to do what I planned, 'cause Amy just took my car keys away and she wants my phone, but I won't give it to her, so she is waiting for my dad to take it off me because apparently I'm doing drugs, but I told her I'm not. I've been at the beach. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to stop 'cause I can't handle it. I'm sorry. Yep. Date 1. Okay, so my post was locked, but hopefully it's okay now. I've posted the link and tried my best with spacing. I'm on mobile. If I can't post it, I give up. For all the support and advice received, I really appreciate and wholeheartedly so grateful for all who DM me to see how I was. Thank you. This will be long because a lot has happened, but many things are still not resolved. Trigger warning. I will mention self-harm, so please, if it might trigger you, please don't read further. I wish I was able to say I followed the advice that was provided, and now everything is better, but some things in life don't play the way we want it to, and we can either let it destroy us, or make us better. After writing my edit where my stepmother was taking my things away and assuming I was on drugs, I started recording on my phone, and she said a lot through the door, many things about my mom and me, and just plain hateful words that I don't want to repeat on here. I fell asleep while I was barricading the door with my body when my dad demanded that I open the door. At this point, I don't remember much of what happened, but my stepmother told me I had to leave the house, and my dad agreed. I didn't know who to call, but I decided to call my coach, and he picked me up, and I was a crying mess. He didn't ask any questions but just told me that I was safe, and if I needed to talk he was here for me. I stayed over one night when Dad picked me up. Stepmother was not at home when we got there. Dad told me we needed to talk. We had breakfast and my dad spoke to me about many things my stepmother told him, and I couldn't believe all the lies she told him. It was a long talk, but in summary it was my use of drugs and alcohol, how I disrespect her in our home, I don't do my responsibilities like chores at home, I'm nasty to her when Dad is not around. He asked me why I was acting like this, and if I had a problem with my stepmother I should have spoken to him. I let him talk, and when he was crying and asked if I had anything to say, I was so lost for words. I knew whatever I said my dad was on my stepmother's side. So I told him I wanted him to watch the recording of the incident that I can send through as an email attachment and the link to my Reddit post, and then we can talk more. I also said I didn't want to be here when he was reading and watching, so I'll go for a drive and he can text me when he's done and ready to talk. He was hesitant at first, but I told him it was important to me, so he agreed, and I left in my car to the beach and sent the email with the video attached and the link to my Reddit post. I don't know how long I waited, but many thoughts were going through my head. I was missing my mom so much, and what if my dad still sided with my stepmother? What can I do now? I fell asleep at the beach spot and was woken up by a police officer knocking on my car door and asking for my name. After confirming my name, he advised me to get out my car and to hand over my keys to him and to follow him to his car. He handcuffed me and assured me that I wasn't in trouble. But this was a welfare check because someone made a call that I was possibly suicidal. I didn't talk after he told me that, and all I remember was just crying. He made me sit in the back of the police car until the ambulance came and they took me to the hospital. I was asked many questions and was evaluated and was told I was depressed and may have extreme anxiety. The physician did say I might have other things, but will require further testing and some sessions with a psychiatrist. My dad came and visited me while in hospital, and when I saw him he looked really tired. When he spoke, it sounded like he was crying, and he told me he called the police on me because the video recording I did, he heard everything my stepmother said, but he also saw cuts on my thighs and was scared, and thought the worst. Honestly, I never watched the video, so I didn't know my thighs were visible. After our cry, we spoke about a few things. I told my dad that I don't feel comfortable living with stepmother after everything she said and done to me over the years, and I'm not sure I can handle being around her because I don't trust her. We spoke about arrangements and knowing my dad still loves my stepmother and I didn't want him to choose between us. I told him that I could talk to Coach if I could stay with him, and after calling him he agreed. I've also been admitted to an agency that will support me because I am mentally unwell. I have been to one session and waiting on another evaluation to be done on me and some testings with my general practitioner so they can diagnose me. I'm currently staying with my rugby coach who has been an amazing pillar. He has set out some house rules, but I respect the fella and don't mind following them. My coach even set a date next week for me and Dad to catch up on. My coach is an awesome dude. I thought of him as just a coach who just wanted our rugby team to win, but when he allowed me to stay over, he showed so much care for me, and I saw a side to him and understand how much he cares for my team. He has a lovely wife, but I'm kinda anxious whenever it's just me and her at their house. That's it right now. My dad lives at home with my stepmother and is trying to sort that out. I have many appointments to get the help I need and a lot of schoolwork to catch up on and rugby training to attend. I've taken a leave of absence from my Macca's job. I'm gonna miss going to the beach for a while, but I understand that it's not a forever thing, so I hope that the next time I go there I'm not crying my eyes out. I'm kinda working on being okay if my dad and stepmother, after those of you who shared your similar experiences, someday I'll be okay. Thank you to all who advised me and encouraged me. Those who reached out through direct message, thank you for the kind words and reaching out. I'm not sure if I'll update again, but maybe I'll let you know if something happens in the future. Take care everyone. Also be kind to one another and most of all be kind to yourself, 'cause you deserve it. Too long. Didn't read. I showed my dad my Reddit post and recording of my stepmother being verbally abusive, and now I'm staying at my coach's house trying to sort out my mental health update too. Hope everyone has been doing well. I wasn't going to update at all, but many who reached out shared their stories and kind words. It truly helped me. I wish I was able to reply, but so many things were happening and I'm sorry. This will be a long one, but it's because this will be the last time, I hope. In my last post, my coach sorted out time for me and my dad to catch up weekly. I've met up with my dad twice and this is how it went. First, catch up at the beach. We spoke and I told him a lot about what happened between me and his wife. I mentioned how she would treated me when he wasn't there, what she spoke to me after they got married, and how she was awful to live with. I told him how I dealt with it for his sake because I wanted him to be happy. I mentioned to him that I spoke with the coach about staying there until I go to university, and then I'll move away because I cannot live with his wife anymore because I'm not sure what I'll do. I'm never going to try and get along with her anymore. He listened and was crying and asked if I would ever get over this. I told him no, and I never wanted to see his wife, and walked off because I was pissed off at what he said and drove back to the coach's house. He messaged me later. I acted like a kid, and I responded, "'Cause I am a kid." Second, catch-up dinner at the coach's house. Second catch-up, my coach invited my dad to have dinner and hang with me. My coach has a pool table in his man cave and a pool. I was excited to hang and catch up with my dad even after our last meetup because I was feeling a bit better. But at the same time I was feeling anxious about the meetup, like I had a bad gut feeling. But I ignored it. Dinner went great, and me, Dad, and Coach had fun playing pool. Later on that night, the coach gave us space to talk. Dad talked about my mom and me as a kid. Just things he would tell me when I was a kid, and it was just me and him. It was fun, and I really enjoyed our time together. When it was time to go home, I offered to drop him off since he drank, but he said his wife was here to pick him up, so I hugged him and he went. I kinda stayed in the garage and waited for her to leave so I could walk in the house, but I heard her say, "How's the little shit?" And I bolted out the door and told her to fuck off. Boy, was I not ready for the slap my dad gave me, but all I remember was swinging a punch at him and knocking him down, and my coach pulling me off my dad. My coach told my dad and his wife to leave. After they left, I told my coach I never wanted to see him again and texted my dad we were done. It doesn't end there. Last week I planned to not go to school on Friday and go for a drive up the line with a few teammates to just get away from everything. They ended up bailing, so I went by myself. I ended up driving to a lake and parking up and just chilling for the school day and just driving back home later on. When I got home at my coach's house, I saw my dad's car parked in the driveway and thought I would have to square up with my dad. When I parked up, my dad ran out the house and looked like shit. He looked like he cried for days, and he started hitting my car, screaming to get out the car and tell him where I was the whole day. I thought he was mad that I wagged school, so he ripped the door open and hugged me so hard and cried, I had no idea what was happening or what he was saying, but all I could understand was, "I'm sorry, and I love you." After what felt like forever, he kinda calmed me down and I asked him why he was here. And then he told me there was an accident with a kid getting hit by a train. And it clicked, my dad thought it was me. He said when he heard the news he called the school and they said I was a no-show and called everyone he could think of. My mate said I went for a drive somewhere but didn't know where, and my dad said he lost it. He calmed down eventually and said he would divorce his wife if I wanted him to. But I told him he needed to choose that for himself. 'Cause the reason I stayed quiet was to make him happy. If he is unhappy, to make a choice for himself. 'Cause I don't want to be the reason he is unhappy, and that now I have to look after myself, and that is getting away from her. And he cried and just said, "More sorries." He ended up sleeping over in the same room as me that night and the night after. 'Cause I think he was scared, and just trying to deal. I was okay with it and coach allowed it. He left after the weekend to sort himself out back at his home. I told him that where I am is good for me, and to not worry, and that I'll turn off Do Not Disturb on my phone so I could see texts. That's pretty much it, really. I don't know what my dad is going to decide to do with his wife, but I am definitely not ever going to associate with her. Ever in the foreseeable future. I love my dad too much to stop seeing him, but he knows my boundaries since I've set them out clear as day, and he knows as much as I love him. I will cut him off if I feel like it's not for me. I'm moving past what happened between me and my dad's wife for me, 'cause I'm tired of letting her beat me in my mind, so I just gotta work on myself. I'm currently happy staying with my coach and his wife. They have been amazing and have shown me so much love. They have awesome kids who I have met, and they have invited me to their family Christmas. I feel bad that I feel anxious when I'm around the coach's wife, but I'm working on it with my therapist and I have a good support system. I know I want to go to university, but not sure if I want to study commerce or law. But I know I am on track with my studies. I just can't afford to skip school anymore. Thank you to everyone who sent messages of support and reached out to share your experiences. Y'all gave me the strength to believe I could get out of this mess and be okay. And if you ever feel down, that there is help out there for you no matter where you are in life. I'm glad I shared on Reddit, 'cause I've learned so much about me and many things I won't forget and teach to my kids. Now I gotta go school. Take care and cheers. OP posted in Mom for a Minute on Sep 27/22 about turning 18. Can't repost from this sub. I hate that my current reality is that I don't have people I can rely on right now in my life. I am trying to do the best to survive and better my current situation. I've had so much happen to me this year and I feel like I can't afford to take time for myself, to catch a break, or else I'll lose what I currently have, which is not much. I know I'm young and have so much to look forward to, but it's hard. Like so hard to want to carry on when so much shit is going wrong. I'm trying to find a place to stay, even in a flatmate situation, to be more independent, but I can barely afford anything. My job offered me a better paying position at the expense of a full-time job, and even though I would love more money, that means I will have to give up my dream to go university. I know many people have had worse situations, and honestly, I don't know how they found the will and help they got. It really feels like the world just hates me, and I know I'm feeling sorry for myself, but I honestly giving up hope. What can I get the family I'm staying with for Christmas? I, 18 am, feel indifferent about catching up with my dad, 42 male. I, 18 male, have a strained relationship with my dad, 42 male. A lot has happened this year between us and it really ruined our relationship. He was my best friend, would be there for my rugby matches and push me to do my best. Earlier this year I had a fallout with my stepmom and my dad, which caused me to move out of my home and in with my coach, 37 mem, who I call Uncle. I have been here ever since. We did try to mend our relationship, but harsh words were exchanged and I stopped reaching out and focused on passing my exams. I have worked hard on myself by working at my job and helping out at the place I'm staying. I have made some sort of peace about my situation and focused on my future. Now my dad reached out last night to meet up with him to hang, and we planned it for next year on the 4th of Jan. I agreed, and that was that. My uncle talked to me about what me and my dad spoke about. He was kind of worried about my feelings about meeting my dad because of my feelings towards the day. I explained the best I could, is that I just feel indifferent about my dad right now. I am not excited or scared about this meeting. I just see it as a date I'll be seeing him, and that's it. Whether we meet up or not, I'm not bothered by it at all. My uncle and his wife care a lot and have done so much for me, so I care about what they say. They think I should have a reason to meet up with him since I haven't spoken to him in a while and worried I could get hurt. Should I have a different mindset towards catching up with my dad? Too long, didn't read. Dad planned to catch up next year for me and him. We had a fallout, so my uncle thinks that I should be feeling something, but I feel indifferent. A commenter asks how it went. Okay, this reply took a while because I wasn't ready to share, but I'm okay for now. My dad turned up with stepmother and told me that they were having a kid. I congratulated them and we spent time talking about my future and Dad telling me he can pay for my university studies as long as I keep my grades up. We spoke about a lot and then we said our goodbyes, and I left. I wasn't able to drive home because I started crying and had to call my uncle to come pick me up. It's been a few weeks since the meeting and now I'm not sure about my feelings about everything but focusing on getting ready for uni, so I'm working a lot more. My uncle and I are planning to go check out his other house that was affected by floods, so that's something to look forward to because I need a change of scenery. Thanks for checking on me, it means a lot. You'll do well, OP. Go out there and be successful for yourself. Your uncle and wife are really a gem. That's a couple you need to return the favor or love one day. So have you decided what major you will do in uni? OP. Most definitely. They are honestly the best support I have and I am forever grateful to them both for sharing their home, family and love. Sometimes I wonder why they do it and they always remind me it's because they care and love me, which means a lot. For uni I am going for a bachelor's in commerce, majoring in commercial law and accounting. Very excited about it and looking forward to it. It will take some years but that's okay for me right now. The father is not leaving the stepmom and OP is working to move forward. I'm flaring this concluded. My parents tried to screw over my dying stepmother, blew up all of our lives instead. My 17 female stepmother Jane is a wonderful, wonderful woman. She and my father got married when I was 4, and she's been a rock in my life ever since. My mother was always my primary caregiver, but up until that point her relationship with my father was acrimonious and I basically never saw him. Jane was the reason they developed a stable co-parenting relationship. She encouraged everyone to have a good relationship with each other and was always there to support me and my mom when things got rough. Jane was always a really hard worker. When she met my dad, he was living out of a hotel and my mother was doing everything in her power to keep me away from him because she was petty and angry that their relationship didn't work out. Meanwhile, Jane had a great job, a nice house, helped my dad get back on his feet, negotiated a visitation schedule with my mom, who hated her for a long time, and made sure my dad sent us money every week because neither one of them could afford an attorney to negotiate child support payments. Jane had no reason to do any of these things, but as I got older she made it clear that she loved me as much as she loved my half-brothers who were born a few years later. I even have my own room in her house because at the time we lived with my grandparents. Various boyfriends of my mom and Jane felt that I needed a more stable environment than that. She's like the opposite of the evil stepmom. When I was 15, Jane won a big lawsuit against an airline company and got awarded upwards of $1 million. She used the money to build sizable trust funds for me and my brothers so that we would be taken care of later in life. Despite having a lot more money, she still wanted to live a fairly modest life, so she paid off the house she has and has been living there ever since with my dad. Sure, she bought a new car and they went on a few nice vacations, but she didn't blow all her money on stupid things, which I respected. About a year ago, things started getting really weird. Whenever I saw Jane, she seemed to look sicker and sicker, but no one would tell me or my brothers why, even though I knew they knew. All we knew is that she was at the hospital a lot. Around the same time, my mom has been coming around my dad a lot more and acting really strange. Basically like she was trying to romance him. Whenever Jane was in the hospital, my mother would insist on spending the night at their house and playing mom to my brothers, which was so weird to me because she never liked them or Jane. She'd be the perfect little housewife and my mom is not like that at all. It was super fake. Worst of all, my dad started falling for it. I'm not stupid. I'm pretty sure they were sleeping together. I tried to shield my brothers from it, but they're not dumb either. I tried talking to my dad too, but he insisted it wasn't like that. Then a few weeks ago, my mom started talking about all the places she'd like to visit, how she wanted a new car and was looking to invest. Which is weird because my mom has been a bartender her whole life and has lived paycheck to paycheck since before I was born. She was acting like she was about to get a lot of money, which started to make me really suspicious. Between Jane being sick and my mom acting all nouveau riche, I had a lot of questions. Finally, I decided to visit Jane in the hospital and ask her about my trust fund. I found out that if anything happened to her, that my dad would inherit all the money, including full control of the trusts for me and my brothers. She asked me why I was so interested in the trust fund, so I told her what's going on with my parents and how my mom has been acting with my dad. I didn't want to, but after everything she did for me, she deserved the truth. It really hurt me to break her heart like that, especially once I found out that she was basically in hospice at this point because of irreversible kidney failure. She's only got a few more months. We both cried so much. Then, 2 days ago, everything came to a head. My mom stormed in furious and started arguing with my dad. Apparently Jane met with her lawyer and changed the trust so that my dad would get nothing and all of the trusts would be controlled by my step-aunt. She demanded to know how Jane found out about their relationship, and I came out and told them that I told Jane everything. I told them that if they wanted to play stupid games they would win stupid prizes and that I wasn't going to let them screw Jane over after all the help she gave my family when she didn't have to. My mom slapped me and my dad just looked so defeated. Then my mom told my dad that she didn't really love him, that she was just pretending to so he would marry her and she could get all of the money. The worst part about it is that my brothers witnessed the whole thing and now on top of their mom dying they have to deal with a cheating dad and his vindictive ex. Our whole family is in ruins and I feel like it's my fault even though I know it's not. Yesterday I visited Jane again and told her about the fallout. She apologized and said that she had to dissolve my trust fund to make sure my mother didn't get a hold of the money, but that as her oldest, I will inherit the house property after she is gone and that's worth more than the other 2 trust funds combined. My father won't get anything because she's going to divorce him before she dies, and honestly, I'm happy for her. She made me promise to take care of my brothers and told me that once I turn 18 this summer I can kick my dad out of the house if I want to. And I fully plan to do that. BTW. I haven't talked to my dad since and I can't even look at my mom. I can't believe they would conspire to do this to Jane after all this time. Just proof that they deserve each other, and I'm embarrassed that they're my parents. Once I turn 18, I'm going to cut my dad out as much as I can and cut my mom out completely. I hope she rots. Meanwhile, I'm going to try and be at the hospital as much as I can until Jane passes away. Anyways, I just needed to vent. I'm really messed up about the whole thing and I feel super betrayed, although I can't even begin to imagine how Jane feels. I'm gonna be so effed up when she dies. I can't even think about that right now, but at least she's not surrounded by people who just want to bring her down. Thanks for reading. Edit. Some people are asking a lot of the same stuff, so I'll just clarify here. My brothers. My plan is to use some of the estate money to fight for guardianship for my twin brothers so that they can live in the house while I kick my dad out. If I can't get guardianship, then I will have to let my dad stay in the house. However, once I turn 18, I will technically be an adult, so even if my dad leaves, I'm still legally able to be responsible for them. The only thing I won't be able to do is stop him from taking them if he leaves. But they will be 18 in 6 years, so even if they do have to leave, they will always be able to come back whenever they want. In a perfect world, my dad would just leave and let my brothers stay with me, which I'm sure my bio mom would be very supportive of because right now she hates all of us and I doubt that will change anytime soon. The trust, from what I understand, my brothers will inherit 1/3 each of the estate, and the remaining 1/3 will be used to keep the house running until they turn 18. After that, it will be up to me if I want to keep the house or sell it. At that point, my brothers will still have money left in the trust so they can branch out or do whatever they want. Otherwise, I will not sell the house and just pass it on to them or keep it and maintain it myself, and they can just stay with me as long as they need to. Edit to the edit. So I just spoke to Jane and she told me that the reason she dissolved the trust is because originally it was going to be split 3x between us kids, and my dad would inherit the house. She dissolved my third and switched it over to make it to take care of the house maintenance, and instead put the house in my name so my dad wouldn't get it. Plus, by doing that, at least financially, I would be getting a much bigger share. The house is worth about 1.5x the amount of my brother's trusts. I just wouldn't be able to do anything with it until my brothers are 18, which I'm totally cool with. Sorry if I don't have a better answer, but I'm just trying to translate what she told me. My parents. The big fight happened on Sunday and I haven't spoken to either of my parents since. I think they're both at my mom's place right now, but that's fine with us because we're all still mad at them, so they can stay gone for all we care. I know technically that's not legal to just leave us alone, but I've been taking care of my brothers for over a year. I can handle a few days while he gets his shit together. Screw both of them. Hope that clears some stuff up. Too long, didn't read. My bio parents tried to screw my terminally ill stepmother out of trust fund money, but she caught on, and now no one on my side of the family gets anything. Additional information from OP on her parents, stepmom's health, trust funds. OP answer. Why isn't Jane on dialysis? I don't remember the exact details, but Jane has a genetic condition where she gets cysts on her kidney. She already had a transplant a few years ago, but now she developed problems with her arteries or something in her legs, so she doesn't qualify for dialysis. She could get another transplant, but she doesn't want to because the last time was so traumatic. Rejections, etc. So she decided to just let herself go onto maintenance medications to prolong her death until she gets her affairs in order. She has a few other health problems that make the typical treatments really dangerous, and according to her, she'd rather die surrounded by loved ones than on an operating table. Dissolving the trust fund. Jane told me she didn't technically have to do it, but she didn't trust my bio parents not to do something shady and get a hold of the money before I turn 18. Even if my aunt controlled the fund, my dad would still be able to collect if something happened to Jane before I turned 18. Her lawyer suggested it's better safe than sorry, and I agreed that it was the best option. I'm not an expert though, I don't know the details. How my mom knew. Like I said before, I'm pretty sure Jane told my dad, who then told my mom, and that's how the argument started. I can't think of any other way, and I didn't really care enough to ask. Jane's thoughts on my mom. She didn't know my mom was doing all of that. My mom has her own place and would only come over whenever Jane was in the hospital for a few days at a time. I've been living with my dad for a little over a year, so he probably told Jane that my mom was there to spend time with me, if he told her at all. Besides, she didn't move in until a few months ago, which I guess is when they started hatching their plan. Jane never outright banned my mom from visiting, so there really wasn't anything she could do. Hope that helps. Edit for the last part. The remainder of the money belonging to the estate that hasn't been put into trust for my brothers is going to be used to maintain the house, utilities, taxes, etc., until my brothers are 18, and then I can either choose to sell the house or keep it and maintain it myself if I'm able to. I plan to go to school in that time and get a better job with the goal of keeping the house, but if I can't, then I have the option to sell it. Not that I will, but that's how it was explained to me. OP on her stepmom and their relationship provides thoughts on her bio mom. OP answer. Honestly, it's because she's more of a real mom than my actual mom. My bio mom is kind of ambiguous about my existence, but Jane was always extra involved, sending me to sports teams and paying for dance classes and just showing interest in my hobbies as I got older. Plus, as the only girl, I think we bonded on a level she can't with my brothers, so she always made sure to let me know I was on equal terms with them. When I was younger, we would watch movies and have girl time where it was just us 1-1, and those are some of my best memories with her. Jane is also really mature, and someone I want to be like when I get older, whereas it feels like my mom is a teenager in an adult's body. She was constantly picking fights with my dad about dumb things, and Jane was always there to smooth things over and keep my best interest at heart over her own feelings. I know my mom made Jane's life really difficult for a long time, but Jane never complained or said anything to me about it, whereas my mom constantly complained about Jane. As I got older, I just always felt more at peace when I was around Jane than when I was around my mom. If you want your stepkids to love you, just be there for them and treat them like your own. Ignore whatever drama you have with your husband's ex and just love your kids. Trust me, if you really care about them, they will know. Relevant comments. Commenter. My only advice is make sure you work with a lawyer once she passes so you get your inheritance and your parents can't try to intervene, and then you keep your promise to use that money for you and your brother's welfare. OP answer. Oh, absolutely. Jane already gave me the lawyer's info, and between him and my step-aunt, I'm sure I will be able to do what I need to do for them. I don't even care about the money. Most people don't have trust funds and turn out just fine. I'm actually more glad that she gave me the house, because you can be damn sure it's going to be a safe space for my brothers whether I end up getting custody of them or not. My brothers are basically Jane's legacy, so my goal is to give them the life and guidance that I got from her, and that they won't get because she'll be gone. OP on the relationship between her father and her stepmom before they got exposed. OP answer. Honestly, it hurts a lot because before Jane got sick, they seemed to have the perfect relationship. Until my birth giver, I like that, came in and fucked everything up with her toxic personality. Honestly, in a perfect world, my mom will end up broke and alone and in a shitty nursing home with bed sores. And when she calls me and begs me for a relationship, because she needs the attention, it'll feel so good to hang up on her over and over again. OP on Jane, stepmom's health, and if Jane is mentally okay on the whole situation. OP answer. I think so. Apparently it's a genetic disease, so she always knew she was going to get sick, she just didn't know when. So mentally I think she was prepared for it. I just hope that she can find peace knowing the truth and knowing that I'll be there to make sure her sons don't grow up all fucked up. OP on her brothers getting therapy to deal with their stepmom's health and her imminent death. OP answer. Yeah. I've already sat them down and talked to them about what's going on. They seem to understand, but they're understandably really sad about the whole thing. I told them that when they go to school they should ask about a grief counselor, and I'm trying to get their health insurance info from Jane so I can find them a therapist for kids. As much as all of this sucks, I think it's brought the three of us a lot closer together. Thanks a lot. I really love my brothers, and I know it's my job to take care of them properly now that they won't have a mom around. Jane did so much to raise me, and my brothers won't have the opportunity, so it's only right that I help them. Since finding all of this out, my plan has always been to have my brothers live with me. I'm already in charge of taking care of them and the house for the most part. The only thing my dad does is help pay the bills. Unfortunately, I won't be able to kick my dad out as long as he's their legal guardian, which is why I'm trying to find some other solution to that. But if when that gets resolved, he can live under a bridge for all I care. Update. Please check my profile for my previous post. Hi guys, it's me again. A lot of you asked me for an update on my situation with Jane and my family, so I've come back with a few things that have happened since I initially posted. I will try to organize this in a way that addresses the major points of last time. Jane is still alive and doing surprisingly well considering the circumstances. She's always been a fighter, and although her disease has been progressing, she's keeping a positive attitude with everything that is going on. She says she's grateful that she was able to see everyone's true colors before she passed, so she could go into the next life knowing the truth. We have become so unbelievably close in the past few months, and it's getting harder and harder to know that she's getting close to the end. She doesn't ever talk about it though, and I know it's because she doesn't want to hurt me, but we both know the situation, so we're just making the best of our time. I'm also not being completely transparent about all of the drama at home, but TBH, I don't think she needs to hear all of that. We did end up having that surprise celebration of life that I planned. A lot more people showed up than I thought, but they all got an Airbnb near the hospital where Jane is, and we were able to take her out and spend some time at the lake near the facility. It was super low-key, which I know Jane preferred, and I was even able to get her old college friend to come after I found him on LinkedIn LOL. We had food and there was music and we played games, and it was overall a really great time, except Jane started crying at the end, but she promised me it was just because she was grateful. My brothers are also doing okay. My aunt, Jane's sister, is currently paying for them to go to therapy, and they've become a lot more open about talking about the situation. They just turned 13, but a lot of the time it feels like I'm talking to actual adults LOL. They've become really independent lately, in a good way, and aside from me driving them places, I don't really have to do much for them anymore. Their grades aren't super great, but they're not failing, and considering the circumstances, it could be a lot worse. They still hang out with friends, and I'm keeping an eye out for like depression symptoms and stuff. The situation with my mom is as funny as it is embarrassing TBH. She spent a few weeks ignoring us, and then she tried to crawl back into my life, basically begging me to let her move in because her lease is about to expire and she has nowhere to go. That convo went about as well as you'd think, and she ended up calling me an ungrateful bitch, and that I couldn't just ignore her because she's my mom. I told her to get out of the house before I call the cops and to go back to my dad, who at that point was only coming home every few days to check on us and grab some clothes. After that, she tried coming by a few times, and when I wouldn't open the door, she would lose her mind and start yelling through the neighborhood. After 3 instances of this, I finally called the cops, but because I'm 17, they told me there's a possibility that I would have to go home with her since technically I'm a minor and need to be with the custodial parent. I told them no way because I was the only one watching my brother's ATM. That led to a whole thing where after a few hours my dad basically showed up and I was allowed to stay there because there was finally an adult present, and I'd basically lived there for over a year. After that, the cops firmly told my mom that if she keeps showing up and causing drama, my neighbors confirmed that she'd been there a few times screaming, that they would arrest her for trespassing since technically it was Jane's house and not hers. She left and hasn't tried coming to the house anymore, but for a while she would call me constantly telling me I owed her and all kinds of stuff. She's now blocked on everything, and anything she needs to say to me gets filtered through my dad. As for my dad, well, since he's basically required to be here for another 2 months until I turn 18, we've basically just avoided each other. It's not too bad though, because I've been heavily relying on guilting him for everything to get my way. For example, he was going to contest the divorce, but I threatened to kick him out when I turn 18 if he does that, so he just signed all the paperwork for a quickie divorce, and is basically doing whatever Jane tells him to do. I don't openly disrespect him or anything, he's still my dad, but I've made it clear that I have no intentions on doing anything he says ever again, and he doesn't fight me on it. Most of the time he's just in his room, and sometimes he'll go back to my mom's, but only for a day or two before they argue and she kicks him out again. LOL. I haven't decided whether or not I'll kick him out yet, and we haven't talked about it either, so I'm kind of playing it by ear. As for me, I'm handling everything as good as I can. I found a new job where I make a little more money, so I've been focusing on saving as much as I can and just being there for my brothers. Between working and school and visiting Jane, I've been so busy I haven't really had time to really stop and think about everything, but I know it'll come. One of my friends has really stepped up and helped me manage everything, and I'm super grateful to him for being there for me and my brothers, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, I wish I had something more exciting to share, but that's what's happened since my last post. Thanks again for all the support on my last post. Relevant comments. OP on the possibility of her stepmom being poisoned from her parents to get Jane's money. OP answer. Hi there. A few people have mentioned this, and yes, we are absolutely certain she is not being poisoned. It's a genetic disease causing her kidney failure, and we have known about it for a long time, but she shielded us from the worst of it. Hence why her sudden decline in health was such a shock to us. We thought she had more time. My brothers have also been screened for this disease, and thankfully neither of them have it. Edit to add. I'm turning 18 in a few weeks, so I don't need to get emancipated, and my dad has already agreed that my brothers will stay in the house with me, because they have nowhere else to go. OP on Jane making video clips for her brothers. OP answer. Yes. Actually, a few people suggested this in my last post, and we have been doing this for a few weeks now. Jane has a little digital recorder that she's been putting her thoughts down on, and she's also written a few letters to us for major milestones. My brothers do not know about this, as we want to surprise them, but that said, they have been coming to the hospital more now that they're in therapy and able to deal with it. I know they do not want to have any regrets, even though it's a difficult situation. Sister-in-law hated me for years, had a tragic miscarriage. Then we welcomed her back, but she told my child she was his real mom. My sister-in-law despised me for years, but after she suffered a tragic miscarriage, we welcomed her back into our lives. Unfortunately, she began telling my child that she was his real mother. David and I have been happily married for 8 years, and we have a 4-year-old son named Tom. Tom is a lively, imaginative kid, very attached to me, and a bit of a mama's boy. I cherish this bond, knowing that as he grows older, his interests will change, and he might not want to spend as much time with me. David and I make a great team, managing our home, raising Tom, and pursuing our careers seamlessly. This harmony stems from David's respectful and communicative nature, which has fostered a strong partnership between us. However, despite our smooth sailing, there's an ongoing issue with David's sister, Kathy. From the very beginning, Kathy has been difficult to get along with, maintaining a cold attitude towards me. David had warned me early on that while his parents would likely accept me, Kathy would be tough due to her protective nature. He was right. When we first met, Kathy bombarded me with questions about my background, all the while acting unimpressed and condescending. She would also bring up David's exes in our conversations, comparing them to me as if it were normal. During one dinner, she even suggested David join her and her friends on a girls' trip, claiming he needed to clear his head before committing to me. This remark annoyed me, and David noticed, asking her to back off politely. This brings me to a point of contention with my husband. While he does defend me, his affection for Kathy sometimes prevents him from setting firm boundaries. This emboldens her to keep pushing, believing she has his best interests at heart simply because she's the older sister. From that first dinner date, I knew Kathy and I didn't like each other. It stung a bit, but I wasn't about to bend over backward to win her over if she had already made up her mind. Despite this, I always remained polite during our encounters, though she never made it easy. One incident that stands out is David's grandparents' anniversary party. The entire family was invited, and I attended as David's +1 since we'd been dating for a year by then. Throughout the party, I enjoyed chatting with his friendly and easygoing family. The one person who completely ignored me was Kathy. I noticed and tried to stay out of her way. When everyone gathered for a group photo, Kathy loudly pointed me out, demanding I step out of the picture. She suggested David might break up with me and didn't want one of her brother's bimbos in the family photo. I was mortified as everyone around us looked uncomfortable. David tried to argue, but Kathy kept interrupting, saying I was just a random stranger and shouldn't have been at the party. Humiliated, I excused myself to find my car keys, determined not to spend another minute near her. David and his parents followed me, apologizing profusely. His mother tried to persuade me to return, but the moment was ruined. I heard his grandparents scolding Kathy, making me feel even guiltier for spoiling the day. I left immediately, considering breaking up with David, thinking I couldn't handle his sister's behavior. However, David showed up at my place later with flowers and pastries, apologizing sincerely. He told me everyone had reprimanded Kathy for her rudeness, and he had threatened to cut ties with her, which made her cry. David expressed his frustration with his sister's antics and reassured me he didn't want anything to do with her anymore. We had a long talk, and I felt comforted by his support. In the following days, David kept his promise. We stopped seeing Kathy altogether, and he ignored her calls. When she showed up unannounced at his house, he changed the locks and asked his parents to talk to her about respecting his privacy. With his parents' support, Kathy had no choice but to accept that her brother wanted nothing to do with her. We hoped this would make her reconsider her behavior, but it had the opposite effect. Kathy started calling and texting me, leaving threatening messages and blaming me for everything. The breaking point came when Kathy showed up at my workplace one afternoon, demanding to see me. Thankfully, my manager intervened and kicked her out, But the incident left me deeply shaken. I told David that I had no choice but to break up with him to escape his sister's harassment and consider taking legal action against her. David was devastated, pleading with me not to end our relationship and promising he would handle the situation. David then convinced his parents to arrange a meeting with Kathy at their home. During this confrontation, his parents, fully aware of what Kathy had been doing, made it clear they wanted nothing to do with her unless she changed her behavior. They all warned Kathy that her actions were borderline crazy, and if she continued, they would support my decision to take legal action. Miraculously, Kathy finally broke down and admitted she needed help. She confessed to feeling out of control and revealed she had lost her job and had been unemployed for months, worsening her mental state. David's parents took immediate action, admitting her to a psychiatric hospital where she could be monitored. David reiterated that he did not wish to maintain contact with her, which Kathy reluctantly accepted. She sent me an apology text that felt somewhat insincere, but I hoped for her sake that she would heal. When David and I finally married, we chose not to invite Kathy, even though she had been discharged and seemed to be doing better. I wanted nothing to do with her, and everyone respected my decision. Kathy did send flowers to congratulate us, which I appreciated. After we returned from our honeymoon, Kathy announced her engagement. It surprised everyone, as no one knew she had been dating. We were cautiously happy for her until we learned she was marrying a man she met in the psychiatric hospital. This man, James, was schizophrenic and an alcoholic with violent tendencies, according to his doctors. Understandably, David and Kathy's parents were concerned. Kathy planned her wedding for the following month and only invited David, excluding me. While I wasn't surprised and felt relieved not to have to make an excuse, David was offended by the exclusion and chose not to attend. Those who did attend the wedding later told us it was a disaster. Kathy and James were heavily intoxicated during the ceremony and couldn't even properly repeat the vows after the priest. During the reception, James continued drinking until he was blackout drunk, then started ripping open his shirt and pants while everyone watched in horror. Being schizophrenic, James didn't like the attention and suddenly attacked a server, accusing the innocent bystander of looking suspicious and hiding something. His family managed to calm him down and paid off the server to avoid pressing charges. This incident deeply scarred everyone, raising serious concerns about Kathy's safety. If James could attack a stranger, what was to stop him from attacking Kathy? David and his parents tried to talk to Kathy about her husband's disturbing behavior, but she was convinced she could change him. Despite their warnings, Kathy believed James would never harm her. Unfortunately, she was wrong. Over the years, James isolated her, cutting off contact with family and preventing her from seeking help. Though there were instances of police being called due to their violent arguments, Kathy refused to leave him, convinced he was the one for her. 4 years ago, I became pregnant with Tom, and we were all overjoyed. I wanted Kathy to be part of my baby shower, so we sent her an invitation. When we received no reply, David drove to her place to check on her. He discovered that James had cut her off from any communication with us and thrown away the invitation. David confronted James, but Kathy defended her husband, refusing to see his wrongdoing. Frustrated, David left, and we lost contact with her. Even after Tom was born, we did not reach out, and her parents eventually stopped trying to convince her, hoping she would be okay. The past few years with Tom have been peaceful and full of love. David and I have found a wonderful rhythm in our marriage, and Tom keeps us busy with his curiosity. David's parents visit every weekend to babysit while we have our date night, allowing us some time off and giving the grandparents quality time with Tom. Everything was going well until 8 months ago when Kathy showed up at our doorstep, muddy and disheveled, with no shoes on. We immediately let her in, and I fetched her a blanket as she was shivering. We hadn't seen her in years and were at a loss for words. David comforted her, asking if she was okay. Kathy looked numb, staring into space. Eventually, she revealed that she had just miscarried. We listened in shock as she recounted how she had gotten pregnant a month ago, initially believing James would be happy. However, he grew increasingly paranoid, fearing the baby would take her away from him. They fought frequently, and he even threatened to poison her food to cause a miscarriage. That day, she woke up feeling uneasy, and at the doctor's, she found out she had lost the baby. Numb and sick, she couldn't drive home, so she walked, eventually ending up at our house. She must have walked at least 20 blocks barefoot, but she couldn't remember why she had no shoes on. I felt so sorry for her and immediately gave her a hug. At first, she hesitated, but then she hugged me back. We sat there for 5 whole minutes as Kathy cried into my arms. We knew then that this was her way of asking for help. David seemed ready to confront James directly, but I convinced him to call the police and notify their parents, who were better equipped to handle the situation. His parents were incredibly grateful to have their daughter back and assured her of their unwavering support. When the police took her statement, they were as shocked as we were by the abuse Kathy had endured. James was arrested despite his protests and threats, continually denying his involvement in her miscarriage. However, Kathy's toxicology report revealed she had been poisoned, leading to the loss of her baby. In the end, due to James's mental issues and his incompetence to stand trial, the judge sentenced him to an indefinite stay in a psychiatric facility for treatment. Although this was frustrating, we were grateful to have Kathy back safe and sound. By then, all my previous animosity towards her had vanished. As a woman, I felt immense sympathy for her and wanted to move past our history to help her heal. Kathy also seemed calmer and no longer hostile towards me. When we felt she was ready, we introduced Tom to her, hoping it would aid her recovery. She grew very close to Tom in a short time, which none of us minded initially. This should have been my first red flag. Over the weeks, she found ways to spend more and more time with my son, often showing up unexpectedly at our house. Staying with her and David's parents made it easy for her to drive over unannounced. She insisted on giving Tom baths and reading his bedtime stories, gestures that initially seemed kind but gradually felt intrusive. Kathy's increasing presence started to feel odd. She visited almost daily, staying longer than necessary, bringing toys and gifts for Tom, and always seeking involvement in his daily routines. She would comment on his clothes or hairstyle, suggesting how Tom would look better, which bothered me. While I appreciated her efforts to bond with Tom, it began to feel like she was undermining me again, this time through my son. My maternal instincts kicked in, and I talked to David. He assured me that I might be overthinking and that his sister was just trying to cope with her pain. He reminded me of her recent loss, making me feel guilty. I decided to let her be, thinking if taking care of Tom made her happy, what was the harm? As days went on, I tried my best to accommodate her constant presence. She started looking after Tom daily while we were at work and even took him to the park in the evenings. Sometimes when I came home, I noticed that my son no longer greeted me with the same enthusiasm. He wouldn't run up to me, and instead, looked at me with curiosity. After Kathy left, I would try to talk to Tom about his day and whether he had any issues with Kathy, but he was less engaged and seemed sad. As his mother, this change in his behavior worried me deeply. However, when I discussed it with my husband, he would gently dismiss my concerns, assuring me that Tom was just growing up and I was overthinking. The nagging feeling persisted, so I confided in a coworker, who suggested installing nanny cams from Amazon in Tom's room and our living room to monitor him. I thought this was a brilliant idea and promptly bought 2 cameras. I didn't inform David about this, not wanting him to dismiss my concerns again. Yesterday, after Tom went to bed, I decided to check the nanny cams. While David watched TV downstairs, I retreated to my study to review the footage, which included audio. Initially, it was just Kathy playing and caring for Tom, appearing very good with children. However, I was shocked when she pulled a book from her purse, one I hadn't seen before. We usually have age-appropriate books for Tom, but this one was different. She read the book to Tom before his nap. As I listened, I realized the story was about adoption and how a mother sometimes gives her child to another mother to care for. Kathy added her own commentary, telling Tom that this was why she had left him in my care years ago because she wasn't ready then. My eyes widened in horror as she continued, claiming that she would always be his real mother and no one could love him more than she did. She kissed his forehead and left him to nap. My hands shook with anger as I realized what she had been telling my son, causing his strange behavior. This poor child must be feeling incredibly confused. I was ready to confront David and demand that Kathy never be allowed in our home again, but I held back. Instead, I decided to take a day off to spend with Tom and understand what Kathy had been telling him. When I informed Kathy that she didn't need to babysit, she reacted anxiously, insisting that she loved spending time with Tom. I firmly told her to back off, wanting a day alone with my child. David asked if I was okay, and I reassured him that everything was fine but that I needed a break. Later, I took Tom to his favorite park and we spent the day playing, eating pizza, and laughing. I wanted him to feel safe before broaching the conversation about what his aunt had been telling him. He got a bit quiet. I reassured Tom that he wasn't in trouble and that he could talk to me about anything. That's when he opened up. He told me how Kathy had been trying to convince him for weeks that she was his real mother. Though he didn't truly believe it, she also told him that I would eventually leave him because only real mothers love their children. Her insistence made him scared to ask me about it, fearing I might actually kick him out. He said he loved me and didn't want to go live with Kathy. Hearing those words broke my heart. I stared at his tear-streaked face, seeing a small and vulnerable child instead of the joyful and playful boy I knew. I knelt down, gently took his hands, and assured him that everything would be okay. We would get through this together. I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of his fears and pain. I felt like a failure for not protecting my son from this psycho. I promised him that he had nothing to worry about and that David and I would take care of it. However, my son then told me that David already knew about all this. I asked what he meant and he said, "I asked Daddy, and he knows about this, but he told me not to tell you anything." My blood ran cold as I realized that my husband, despite knowing what his sister was up to, had chosen to protect her instead of our son. He knew everything. I couldn't let my son be around these people anymore. I didn't want him to be confused and frightened about his own mother. I was his mother, and it was my job to protect him from this. I quickly drove home and packed our bags. I told my parents we were coming over and that if David asked, we would say I missed them and wanted to spend time with them. Luckily, my parents are very supportive and immediately said yes. As I write this, I've already explained everything to my parents, and they are as shocked as I am about what Kathy has been telling my son. David did call when he came home to an empty house, but I tried to sound normal, telling him I needed a break from our place and work. He sounded curious, but I assured him I'd stay with my parents for just a few days. We rarely fight, so I guess he didn't think much about it, even though my behavior must have seemed strange to him. I am so conflicted right now. I have no idea what to do. How should I confront this situation? Am I the asshole for distancing my son and me from my husband's crazy sister? Update 1. Wow, I woke up to over 600 comments on my post. I can't believe so many people on Reddit have come across my story. I used fake names throughout, so hopefully, none of David's family members will realize it's about him. To those criticizing me for not talking to my husband first, I assure you, I would have if my son hadn't already tried to talk to David. My mother's instinct told me that since my husband knew for weeks about our son's changed behavior and kept gaslighting me, a confrontation with him wouldn't have been productive. I needed to get my son out of the situation immediately, and he is now much safer with my parents. No one can feed him lies here, and that's all that matters. Kathy has been trying to contact me, sending multiple messages insisting she needs to see my son and how much she misses him. I plan to put an end to this at the upcoming family get-together at David's parents' place this weekend. This gathering has been planned for weeks because David's grandparents are visiting, and I thought it would be a nice time to spend together. However, given recent events, I will use this opportunity to speak my truth and ensure Kathy stays away from my son for good. Update 2. I'm back with an update. I finally confronted David as planned during the family get-together. I was so nervous beforehand, but I decided to bring the nanny cam recording as proof. To cut to the chase, I called out Kathy in front of everyone during lunch. She looked shaken and tried to laugh it off as if it wasn't a big deal. Then I showed the nanny cam footage and explained that I had recorded what she told my son. I watched the color drain from her face as I sent the video to the family group chat for everyone to see. Her parents were horrified as they watched her try to convince my son that she was his real mommy. Next, I confronted David and told him how he failed to protect our son. My husband looked really guilty but tried to justify his actions, saying he didn't think much of it and thought it would help his sister cope with her grief. He felt torn between supporting his sister's recovery and telling me about it, ultimately choosing to keep quiet. I told him that because of his actions, I no longer trusted him and couldn't let our son be around him or his family. For the first time in a long while, I saw my husband break down in tears, but I stood firm. I made it clear that I couldn't let my son grow up in a family where his father refused to stand up for him to protect his mentally ill sister. David and Kathy's parents and grandparents apologized to me and assured me they would make sure Kathy stayed away from our son. Kathy looked utterly humiliated but didn't have the decency to apologize. David kept trying to justify his actions, but I ignored him. I left shortly after the confrontation, feeling that my work was done and wanting nothing more to do with any of them. Update 3. I see some of you are confused about my decision, so I wanted to clarify. Yes, I plan on divorcing my husband. I know many of you suggested giving David a second chance since this wasn't entirely his fault, and I agree that he is a good man. However, being a good man doesn't automatically make him a good father. Just because we never had issues doesn't mean he was a good father to Tom. He should have addressed this from the beginning when our son came to him with doubts, instead of spending weeks trying to cover it up and gaslighting me. Both Tom and I can't trust him anymore. I welcomed Kathy back into my life with open arms after what she went through because, as a woman, I felt sorry for her. But in the end, she proved why I never liked her in the first place. I understand that Kathy's abuse was extremely traumatic, but that doesn't mean our son should have to suffer for it. She's an adult with mental issues, and although we thought she had improved, she clearly hadn't. However, what really surprised me was my husband. The fact that he prioritized her mental well-being over our son's shows why he should never be around Tom. He was always such a supportive husband, and I thought I could trust him, but his actions regarding Kathy have shown otherwise. I promise that from now on, I will protect my son no matter what. I am confident I can get full custody of Tom if I expose his family history during the custody battle. After losing my job during the 2020 pandemic, I lived in a camper. Now, my parents are telling my brother to take my house because I don't have a family. My parents told my brother to take my house because I don't have a family. I'm a single man in my early 30s, and my brother, who is 29, already has 4 kids. He became a father at 22, followed by another child a year later, then a third 2 years after that, and his 4th was born just a few months ago. My sister-in-law and I don't get along. She constantly provokes me by acting superior, and when I retaliate, she becomes a dramatic victim, crying on cue and garnering sympathy from everyone around her. Despite knowing her true nature, my parents and brother adore her. I'll admit she's very attractive, but her personality is so awful that I could never be attracted to her. She refuses to work, even though she has a college degree, and my mother takes care of the kids all day. Their finances are solely dependent on my brother, forcing them to live at my parents' house due to their limited income. Privacy is a serious issue with all of them crammed into a 3-bedroom house from the 60s. My younger brother was always the favorite growing up. We're 3 years apart, but he developed a superiority complex because any retaliation from me was met with severe punishment. It was clear my parents favored him, giving him more of everything unless other family members intervened, which they often did. This led my parents to move us 150 miles away from our extended family to avoid scrutiny, resulting in us only seeing them on holidays. My brother was physically abusive, flirted with my first girlfriend until she broke up with me, and laughed at any of my misfortunes. My parents' advice was always to suck it up. They only treated me equally when they wanted to maintain appearances. It was almost amusing to see their discomfort when they had to treat me the same as my brother on birthdays and Christmas in front of others. Our nosy relatives loved gossip, so my parents worked hard to hide the reality, threatening to take away my possessions if I spoke out. When I turned 18, they celebrated my move out, even though I hadn't finished high school. Couch surfing was better than living with them. They didn't attend my high school graduation, but I didn't mind. Since then, I've only seen my parents and brother on holidays like the rest of the family. The 2020 pandemic hit me hard. I lost my job and couldn't renew my condo lease because my roommate also lost his job, and we couldn't afford the rent on unemployment. I love that 2-bedroom condo. As the lease ended, my roommate moved in with relatives, and I had to sell almost everything I owned to avoid homelessness. I shouldn't have rented such an expensive place, but I enjoyed the high life until it turned on me. I realized I should have chosen a cheaper place to save more money. I came up with a plan. I owned a truck because I love trucks, so I bought a $1,000 camper in good condition and attached it to my truck, planning to live in it temporarily. But I ended up living in it much longer. I initially hoped to park it at my parents' house, where my brother and his family lived. When I asked my parents, they said their house was full and we hadn't gotten along for the past decade. They would only let me park there if I paid rent equivalent to an apartment in my area, which was unaffordable for me as a jobless person trying to save my unemployment money. I might as well rent an apartment with that price. My parents called my camper an eyesore and told me to leave since we couldn't agree. My sister-in-law found it hilarious that I had to live in a camper, and my brother joined her in mocking me, calling me a homeless bum. I parked in a store parking lot that first night, scared out of my mind that someone might try to break in. I barely slept. I had nowhere else to go. Other relatives lived far away and my friends lived in apartments. I was attached to my area and didn't want to leave. I forwarded my mail to a friend's apartment, my only way to receive mail. Finding a stable place to park was quite a challenge. I spent months living a nomadic camper life while searching for a job similar to my previous one. During this time, I encountered numerous difficulties, from dealing with beggars and drug addicts to people demanding I leave because they considered my camper an eyesore. Once someone claimed to be part of an HOA and told me to move, even though I wasn't parked near any houses. When I questioned which HOA, they became aggressive and threatened me, so I moved to avoid trouble. To maintain a steady supply of electricity, I learned to use a long extension cord to recharge my camper batteries by plugging into any available outlet. This often meant sneaking around and using an outside outlet of a random building while parked on the street. Though I know it's not ideal, I needed to keep my refrigerator running. I had a small solar power bag for my phone, but I didn't have a generator, which would have been noisy and required fuel. So I did what I had to do. After months of this lifestyle, I finally secured a new job. I had to move to a neighboring city to find a non-retail job. I had promised myself never to work retail again after college, but I was close to breaking that promise. Although I was still receiving unemployment benefits, I had no stable place to live and didn't want to be jobless when the benefits ran out. Plus, I was incredibly bored with only reading, watching movies on a small portable DVD player, using my phone or laptop, and keeping track of where I could park and use public bathrooms. I envied the Japanese for their public bathhouses, which we could really use here. When I landed the job, I practically lived in the back lot of the building, in old employee parking spaces by the warehouse that no one else used because they were so far back they were almost forgotten. My boss, the company owner, liked this arrangement because I was always available for any shift as long as I had enough sleep. He even let me detach the camper from my truck and set it up in one of the spaces so I could drive around without it. I'm not sure if this was legal, but no one bothered us the entire time I lived there. I had few issues with trespassers. The security guards handled them. I was essentially on call all the time and worked nearly every day. My boss allowed me to plug my camper into the building for power and water, and I paid a small rent by working for free on Sundays, when the office was empty except for the janitor and security guard. I showered at a friend's apartment or at my local gym since the camper had no shower and only a portable toilet. I avoided using it to keep from having to empty it, a nasty chore, so I used other bathrooms whenever possible. I had a key to the warehouse and could use the bathroom there at any time. I became close friends with the night security guard. Heating the camper in winter was easy with a small electric heater, but summers were tough. Without AC, I got a used portable air conditioner to make it bearable. I earned a lot of overtime and learned new skills from my coworkers. Eventually, midway through the year, I was promoted to supervisor and started earning a better salary. This made me realize I needed a stable long-term living situation. I found a 3-bedroom manufactured home on a small property just 2 miles from work. I bought it for $10,000 less than the asking price, using nearly all my savings for a down payment and getting approved for a home loan. I no longer had to live in a camper. There was enough space to park my truck and set up the camper in the backyard, where it could serve as an extra space if needed. Once settled, I made the mistake of bragging about my new home on Facebook. My family saw the post, and that's when things got complicated. A few weeks later, my parents and brother, along with his family, showed up unannounced for a tour. I hadn't given them my address, so I still don't know how they found me. None of my friends admitted to telling them, and no family had visited me before, so I suspect they may have followed me home from work. It wouldn't surprise me. Once I opened the door, they practically barged in like a horde of overexcited tourists, immediately making themselves at home. They nosed around everywhere, and my sister-in-law kept flashing me this unsettling smirk. It wasn't until later that I figured out why, and it made me angrier than a bull on steroids stung by a hornet. My parents kept talking about how much extra space I had and how it was too much for someone like me who had no wife or kids. Sure, not now, but maybe someday. My brother kept pointing out that my house had more space than our parents and was closer to his job. Red flags all around, I know. Eventually, my brother, let's call him Dan for simplicity, asked to speak privately. Everyone else suddenly left the room and gathered on the front porch, making me realize they had planned something. Dan said the house was too much for me alone and suggested that he and his family move in because his wife was pregnant with their 4th child and my house was much closer to his job. He pointed out that I already had the camper, so I could just live in that while they took the main house. Not once did Dan mention offering rent, even though he had a good job. He also talked about making changes and setting curfews, saying I couldn't just walk in any time without notice. If it weren't my brother, I would have thought he had lost his mind. But Dan had long since gone off the deep end, thanks to our parents treating him like the center of the universe. I tried to speak, but he kept talking over me, as if I had no say in the matter. There was no way in hell I'd rent my house to him or his insufferable wife. I might consider renting to others to help pay off the mortgage, but not to them. I had seen stories like this online but never thought it would happen to me. Yet my parents, brother, and sister-in-law were a perfect fit for the roles of entitled narcissists. So I picked up my phone, set it to record, and held on to it. Dan didn't notice or care. He kept waving his arms and listing all the reasons why he needed my house. He acted like it was a done deal and even tried to shake my hand. That's when I finally stood my ground and said, "Hell no," loud enough that Dan stumbled backward. I rarely raised my voice to him like that, as I was usually punished for it by our parents, but this was my house, not theirs. My resolve was unyielding. I stood up and told him that my house was not up for grabs, and acting like he could move in just because they wanted it wouldn't change that. I bought my house for myself, and it wasn't my fault he kept having more kids and had to live with our parents because he couldn't afford to move out. Dan got as close to me as he could without touching me and said I didn't deserve the house and that he needed a better place for his family. I laughed in his face, saying that was total bull because I worked hard to buy my house. Of course, I deserved it. Dan started yelling that I had no wife or kids and didn't need all the space, so I might as well give it to him. I told him I wasn't giving him anything, and he hadn't even offered to pay rent if he moved in. I'd still be covering the entire mortgage on my own house without being able to live in it. Then Dan said he shouldn't have to pay rent because his family came first. After I kicked my parents, brother, and sister-in-law out for trying to force me to hand over my new house, I immediately went on social media and told the whole story to the family. It spread quickly, but you won't find it now because it has since been deleted and my profile is private. I posted about it because I knew my family would twist the event to make me the villain, and I was right. But I had about an hour to get my side out first, and I had video evidence to back up my story. No, I don't plan on showing the video here, so don't ask. Being proactive paid off because I got a decent number of family members on my side right away. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law must have planned to write their own post, but it was too late, so they didn't even bother trying to lie much. They had a few supporters, but not many. Most of our family already knew how entitled they were, so they quickly understood and accepted what happened. One person, whose identity I don't know, called me to rant that I was a horrible brother and needed to make way for a real family man. I just ended the call and blocked the number. It didn't happen again. The week went by and my parents showed up with Dan on my front porch, just as they said they would in their ultimatum. They rang my doorbell like crazy and pounded on the door until I finally answered. I opened the door just a crack, and they tried to shove their way in again. But I had installed a couple of latch chains and braced my body against the door. My father and brother demanded I let them in, but I said I was recording everything on camera and would call the police if they tried to force their way in again. My mother calmed them down and, in her most sickly sweet tone, asked if I was ready to let my brother move in. I told them to f off and never come back. My mother put on the crocodile tears and asked why I couldn't just do this for Dan because he's my beloved brother. I laughed and bluntly said I don't love him as a brother because he treated me like crap for years and they encouraged him to do so. They are terrible parents, and he's a terrible brother. Then I told them to leave or I'd call the police ASAP. They all left surprisingly easily, apart from my mother's loud crying and the others giving me dirty looks. One could say making them leave was suspiciously easy. I thought the whole mess was over, but I should have taken them more seriously because they had other stupid plans. I came home later that week on Friday evening to find a moving truck and my brother's minivan parked in my driveway. It was Dan and his family. They were moving stuff in. He waved at me with a crap-eating grin. I was furious and told him and his family to stop, but my sister-in-law smugly said that, like it or not, they were moving in. Then, in the most fake way, while tilting her head and puckering her lips, she said it was okay because my mommy allowed it and I should always listen to what my mommy tells me. I seethed with rage just hearing those words and looking at her smug face, so I locked myself in my truck and called the cops right away. When they realized what I was doing, my sister-in-law started pounding on my window and yelling at me to stop, saying I couldn't do this to her because she and Dan needed the house. She cried, "Why can't you just do this for Dan?" I responded, "F Dan, it's my damn house, not his." Then she threatened to key the side of my truck unless I stopped calling the police, all of which the 911 operator heard thanks to the window being slightly open. I told my sister-in-law that if she damaged my truck, I'd sue her, and she was smart enough to retreat. When the police arrived, Dan, my sister-in-law, and their kids had locked themselves in my house. I explained the situation to the cops and showed them my new driver's license with my current address. When we approached the front door, I noticed they'd changed the lock, and the old one was lying on the porch with the center drilled out. The drill and a Harbor Freight drill bit set were left right next to it. Could they have been any more foolish, leaving evidence out like that? I pointed out the broken lock and the drill, then detailed the events that had transpired. It seemed Dan had called our parents, as they showed up while I was talking to the cops. My parents immediately lied, claiming I had agreed to rent my house to my brother and his family. I countered, saying that was an easily provable lie. Dan and my sister-in-law finally emerged from my house with some papers, looking smug as if they'd outsmarted me. They had drawn up a fake rental agreement, but my signature wasn't on it. There was a signature, but it didn't resemble my handwriting at all. I doubted they had ever seen my signature, which was incredibly stupid on their part. I pointed out that it was blatant fraud and that if the cops investigated it would be clear. I warned that going to jail and court wouldn't benefit them, and it could even make Dan lose his job, his only means of supporting his family. I also mentioned I would get a lawyer and sue for damages if anything of mine was lost, stolen, or broken, and I'd call CPS for good measure. Dan turned white and looked terrified, but my mother stepped between us, insisting I should do this for Dan and live in the camper so they could have a family home. I shouted at her that if she thought it was such a great idea, she should let Dan have her house instead. The cops separated my mother from me, and I loudly demanded they all leave immediately, or I'd press charges. I declared that they drilled out my lock to break in. The lease papers were obvious fakes. They badly forged my signature, and I had recorded video of my sister-in-law attacking me. These were felonies I could ruin their lives with if I wanted, and if they didn't leave, I would do just that. The only reason I hadn't already was for Dan's kids, so they had one chance to get out. My parents finally realized they couldn't force me to give in. My mother surrendered, saying she'd put an end to this. She spoke quietly to my sister-in-law while my father talked to Dan. My sister-in-law instantly started crying loudly, ripping up the fake rental papers into tiny bits and tossing them like confetti, only to have an officer tell them to pick up the pieces or be cited for littering. The cops had, "I don't get paid enough for this," looks on their faces. Dan had to start telling his kids to load their stuff back into the moving truck. The kids were all crying, with the eldest sobbing that he wouldn't get his own room now. My sister-in-law and Dan tried one last pathetic attempt to guilt me with a sad family routine, gathering in a group hug facing me. They must have practiced it beforehand. All the kids had the same pleading look with quivering mouths. My sister-in-law kept rubbing her pregnant belly and tilting her head to look pitiful, and my brother made the saddest face he could, saying, "Please don't do this. We need to be able to live here." But I didn't budge and told them to keep packing. All the kids and my sister-in-law turned up the crying, and Dan yelled, "Are you satisfied with yourself? You've denied us a home because you're too selfish to share and help out family." I laughed like a maniac and retorted that what he was trying to do was taking, not sharing, and no amount of crying would make me let his family move in. He was no brother of mine anymore. He was just an entitled prick who thought he could take whatever he wanted from me like when we were kids. Dan started F-bombing me until the cops warned him to cool it or he'd end up in cuffs regardless of whether I wanted to press charges. He looked both scared and supremely pissed off. I asked the cops if they could stick around until my parents, brother, and sister-in-law had all left, and they said they weren't going anywhere until the situation was resolved. In fact, within a few minutes, the 2 cops became 4 as more arrived for some reason. That gave my parents extra incentive to get moving. I made Dan give me the keys to the new lock he'd put on my front door, although I got a new lock the next day anyway because I didn't know if he had copies of the keys. He was really reluctant to hand them over and ended up throwing them down the street and into a storm drain, telling me to get them myself. One of the cops scolded him for that and made him retrieve the keys. Dan had to pull off the grate to get at them and got pretty dirty in the process. When he finally got the keys back, he grumbled and then slammed them into my hand. I then told them all to leave and never come back. My mother threatened to disown me for this, as if that were some kind of threat. I voiced that to them, and in an overly sarcastic tone said something like, "Oh no, that means I won't get to come to any holidays with you guys where I always get treated like crap because Dan has always been your favorite. You treated me so badly growing up that if Dan ever needs an organ donor, I wouldn't give him anything. So do like you always told me when I was mistreated and suck it up." Final update. My parents told my brother to take my house because I don't have a family. I waited until after the new year to make an account and post, just in case more stuff happened, and it did. As previous readers know, my sister-in-law was making passive-aggressive posts on social media clearly directed at me, especially after she had her 4th baby in November. She kept posting the same repetitive nonsense, finding semi-clever ways to reword it, but essentially complaining about living with my parents, the lack of space, and needing her own house. I know I sound dismissive, but after what I've been through with these people, you'd be ready to sarcastically play tiny violins in front of them too. They're just that bad. Since I waited until January to post, more happened, just as I thought. I mentioned before that I'd invited half the family for a Christmas Eve party at my house. Everyone I invited came, even though it was a 3 to 4 hour drive for them. They wanted to come and show their support. They praised me for working hard to get a house on my own and apologized for everything I'd been through. They asked why I didn't just take my camper and drive 3 hours back to them instead of living nearly homeless for so long, and I had to sheepishly admit I was very attached to living around here, where my best employment opportunities were. My hometown doesn't have many great job opportunities in my field, if any, and I wanted to make my own way as much as possible. An answer they overall accepted. We moved on to having a really nice party, the best I'd had in years. Some relatives brought CDs of great Christmas albums, and my favorite was the one my uncle brought of Ray Charles. He sings Christmas songs like no one else. It was a grand and happy time. I felt like, for once, I could just forget my past issues and enjoy the moment. But I wouldn't be writing this if it had stayed that way. About 2 hours into the party, you know who showed up. My parents, brother and sister-in-law walked in trying to look all smiles. They didn't even knock, just walked right in like they belonged there. I shut off the music and told them to leave immediately. They begged to stay and said they brought gifts. One of my uncles stood up and yelled at them before I had a chance to speak. He said they didn't deserve to be in my home or my life after the crap they pulled months earlier, and several other relatives backed him up. This uncle, my mother's brother, used to adore her until he found out about the stuff that went on between me and my parents. My grandparents, my mother's parents, as old as they are, hurriedly stepped in and told my parents that if they wanted to make amends with me, it was far too soon. They expressed their immense disappointment in them for the past year. They'd hidden their favoritism for my brother from prying eyes for a long time, but no one was fooled anymore. They needed to make a serious effort to treat me like a son if they ever wanted to be in my life again. Then they turned to Dan and my sister-in-law and said they were tired of the repetitive nonsense my sister-in-law kept posting. They told her to let it go already because my house would not become their new home. My sister-in-law reverted to her usual crying routine, throwing a tantrum about how she should be the one living here and not me. She sat down and complained that it wasn't fair I had this house to myself when I had no family, while she had 4 kids that needed more space. She just wanted a better place to live and feel like a real mom. It was petty of me, but I loudly pointed out that she sucked as a mother because she let my mom do most of the parenting while she sat on her butt all day, playing on her phone or spending all of Dan's money. She had the nerve to complain about it. I even joked that I was surprised her baby didn't get drunk from her breast milk since she drank so much booze. That comment got me some stares. My sister-in-law demanded to know if I was calling her a bad mom. I said the evidence speaks for itself. If she wanted to afford to move out of my parents' house someday, she needed to use her college degree, get a job, and save money. My mom already did most of the childcare for my brother's kids, so she'd have plenty of time after her baby got a little older. My brother's eldest, a 7-year-old, ran up and started kicking and screaming at me for yelling at his mom. He kept at me about how his mom said I was the bad guy who made her cry and didn't let them live here. My brother pulled his son away, but the other relatives jumped back in, and it turned into a family intervention against my sister-in-law and brother. She was crying, her new baby was crying, her kids were crying. Hell, even Dan was nearly in tears from the verbal lashing he was getting. He ended up just sitting on the ottoman by the front door, looking like a complete wreck. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. He couldn't even say 2 words to me, not with a house full of angry people ready to judge him if he tried to act like the golden child again. If they weren't there to hold him back, I bet this would have ended up like when he tried to take my house months earlier. By this point, though, he'd been so thoroughly humiliated that his and my parents' reputation in the family was completely destroyed because the masks were off. Soon after, my parents, brother, and sister-in-law all left in defeat. The party resumed, and we all avoided speaking of what had just happened for the rest of the evening. Since most of the adults had been drinking, everyone stayed the night at my house. I even let some of them sleep in the camper to ensure there was enough space. It makes a good guest house. My relatives had wanted a tour of it earlier and couldn't believe I'd been living in it for around 2 years. They asked a lot of questions about what summer and winter were like and so on. I was up earlier than everyone else on Christmas morning and had a fresh pot of coffee and some ibuprofen ready for those suffering from spiked eggnog hangovers. They complimented me on being a way nicer host than my parents ever were, and we all agreed to do this again next Christmas. After Christmas, my sister-in-law finally stopped making posts that were obvious digs at me and even deleted the old ones. But shortly after the new year, she posted again, complaining about how she tried to convince my parents to get a camper like mine so it could be set up in the backyard. That way, Dan and his family could use the whole house as their family home. My parents vehemently turned down that idea. They were not going to be pushed out of their own home, let alone their master bedroom. The post was only up for a couple of days before my sister-in-law removed it, and she has hardly posted anything since. She loves to complain, but if a tree falls and no one is around to hear it, can it still complain? My sister-in-law seems to have realized there's no point in doing it when no one is listening. And Dan can't afford to move his family out on his salary alone anytime soon. If they end up expecting another child in the next few years, I won't be surprised. Things have mellowed down for me since then, and I've even invited friends over for a poker night. I suck at poker because I can never remember the rules, but so what? We get to drink beer and eat junk food while being merry idiots. We loaded up on Whoppers from Burger King and just had a great time, enjoying the evening and getting pleasantly drunk. I think maybe around summer I'll look into possibly dating someone. I'm not exactly getting younger, so fingers crossed that goes well. My camper just sits idle in my yard now, and I admit there are days I go out there just to spend time in it. After living in it for 2 years, it feels like my second home. Maybe one day I'll actually use it for camping as intended. I've never been camping. My parents considered it a waste of time, so it would be a completely new experience for me. This pretty much marks the end of what happened. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law have been staying clear of me. In fact, they've gone back to acting like I don't exist, just like before I bought a house. Not that it bothers me at all, it's better this way. But they'll inevitably come back in some way. I know they will. I just wonder what kind of stupid thing they'll do next. If anything notable like this happens again, I'll make another post if this account is still active. My boyfriend lied to me about having a vasectomy, which got me pregnant. And now I feel disgusted when I touch him. I, female 34, have been in a relationship with Finn, male 47, for a little over a year. I live on my own and he lives on his own, but occasionally I spend the night at his place. Finn is handsome, fit, funny, and charitable. His kindness was what caught my attention. He was just a very thoughtful and kind man, and I love that about him. I have struggles with PTSD, so I don't feel comfortable with intimacy until I feel safe and trust that person. Finn said he understood and didn't press it. We didn't start getting intimate until 2 months in, but I was pretty drunk, so I was upset the next morning and he comforted me. He didn't get angry or blame me at all. After that, we had a healthy sex life. I was adamant he wears protection every time. Once while we were in the middle of playtime, he asked if he could take the condom off. I said no, and he said that it wasn't feeling good to him and he is unable to climax with one on. I said no again. Afterwards, he didn't cuddle or hold me like he always did and said nothing to me. I got up to get water and asked if he needed anything and leaned over to kiss his cheek. He shied away from my kiss and muttered, "Oh, now you care about me?" I asked him what that was about, and he told me he bends over backwards to make me happy, but he didn't get to feel good because I won't let him not wear a condom. I told him I am very worried about pregnancy. I live in a place where abortions are extremely difficult. He said I am on birth control, so what's the issue? I said that's not 100%, and he knew it. I grabbed him some water and told him that if he got a vasectomy, we could talk. They are reversible and accessible. I just cannot get pregnant. We didn't discuss it again, and he even apologized for being a jerk the very next morning and took me to the spa. I apologized for ruining the night, and he said it was all right, and we kind of moved on. Everything was great, and around the 6-month mark, he said he thinks we are getting serious and that he considers me his partner, and asked about the condoms again. I reminded him of my requirement for that, and he said he had to think about it. About 2 months ago, he had a work trip that lasted a week and a half, and when he returned, he was all over me. At the time, I was going through a difficult depression. I suffer from depression, and sometimes it gets really bad. He seemed annoyed and made a remark that I am punishing him for missing and loving me so much, and he held my face and started kissing me again. After the back and forth for a few more minutes, I just gave up and we had sex. In the middle of it, he asked if he could take off the condom, and I said no, but he said he had the vasectomy. He was so excited to get me in bed he had forgotten to tell me. I stupidly said, well, all right then. After that, he would forget the condemnation altogether, until my cycle was off. At first I figured it was stress, change in diet, a billion other possible reasons, but this nagging feeling came over me and I got tested. Pregnant. He found me crying on his bathroom floor and asked what was wrong, so I told him, and he smiled and laughed like, "Really? That's amazing, baby," and left me there, and he went whooping through the other room. When he came back, he was rattling off so much info. He had a dream about this, and now it's happening, so it must be a sign. My brain finally caught up, and I asked about the vasectomy, and he said, "It's not 100%, right? Like condoms and pills." I was puzzled, as the only goalie we took out of the equation was condoms. He said it was a miracle, and I told him absolutely not. I explained that my best friend lives in a different state, and I will be going to visit and also benefit from the reproductive health clinics there. He went silent. He asked me if I really hated him that much, and I didn't understand. I said I never want to be pregnant and that he knew this about me. That hasn't changed. He became extremely angry with me, saying I wouldn't dare murder his child, and that if I loved him, I would never threaten that again. He explained that he will take care of us. He makes plenty of money, and don't I treat you like a queen? So all he is asking is that I have the baby. I said I needed to go and started packing to go home, and he followed me, repeating things like, "You won't though, right? You won't murder my baby?" and stuff like that. He kept asking where I was going, and I said home. I was too tired and emotional right now and I want to go home. He stepped in the doorway and said no, and we needed to talk about this. I started to get upset as he was blocking me and I felt trapped. I asked him to move and he said no. I asked him again, I want to go home, and he said no again. He said, "You are not leaving. What part of that don't you get?" I started crying and grabbed my phone and backed away from him, telling him to stay away from me. Finn looked really sad and said I couldn't be serious. He would never hurt me and asked me to stop crying. I demanded he let me leave and he did. He has since been calling and texting me begging me to talk to him. He says I really hurt him by pretending to be scared of him, as I know he would never hurt me. He said he treats me like a goddess and I played the helpless victim card and that things like that can ruin a man's life. He then said that I wasn't thinking straight and, "Is your brain lying to you again?" When I have a PTSD or depressive episode, I sometimes say my brain is lying to me again, to make it seem less heavy a topic. He has a very community-facing job and I remembered the look on his face when I backed away. I don't want to ruin his life or our relationship. At that moment my emotions were so high that I just reacted. But I wasn't pretending. I sat in my car for God knows how long, shaking before I could drive home. I've been ignoring his reaching out, but I feel like a coward. Am I? The A. Am I? The A has no consensus bot. OP received mixed reactions. Relevant comments: omeprazole mommy. He literally lied about getting a vasectomy and got you pregnant after you had explicitly set boundaries. OP on if she lied about birth control to her boyfriend. OP answer: I am on the patch. Never lied about that. Update: he broke up with me and called me a murderer, so I made an appointment and got the abortion. It was honestly such a horrible experience, but my bestie was with me and the whole staff were so kind and supportive, so I am grateful. Thank you to those who encouraged me to get it done. It was awful, but pregnancy and being trapped with him would have been much worse. Finn texted Wednesday and apologized and said he said things he didn't mean, and to please answer my phone as I have been ignoring him. When he called again, my bestie recorded it all. Before I could finish hello, he went on a long bit about how amazing I am, how much he loves me, what a great mother he knows I will be, and he will marry me immediately if that's a concern of mine. When I finally got to talk, I said that I am no longer pregnant and I never want to be, and that I was clear about this from the beginning. He asked if it was miscarriage and then said, "Because I know you wouldn't willingly murder our child, right? Say right, it's a miscarriage." I got quiet and he said that it's okay. Miscarriages are not the female's fault and that we can just try again. I said, "Again? We weren't trying to begin with. I was on BC and he had the vasectomy. And you all guessed it." He laughed and said he lied about the vasectomy so I would give up on condoms, that he long decided I was perfect and he loved me and wanted me to be the mother of his kids. My best friend spoke up and said that was recorded and to leave me alone or she will post it on social media, and he started screaming at us. He then sounded like he was crying and said I was a witch for this, that I am a hateful murderer, and that I broke his heart. He went on to say if I tried to slander him to remember actions have consequences. He then broke up with me and said he will check back with me in a few days when I am actually alone, and we will talk in person to see if I have come to my senses. He wants us to go to church together Sunday, which is now today, and set a time to pick me up. I said no, but I do have a ring cam, and sure enough he showed up at my door. I watched him note my car was not there, and at my front door, on camera, he texted me asking if I was sleeping around on him and if I let the other man ride you like a wild horse without a condom, and if so he gets a hall pass. He said to come home immediately as we need to come to an understanding of our relationship ASAP. I return home tomorrow and don't know what to do. Edit. Anyone who wants to shame my abortion, I have zero regrets, and actually will advocate for them from now on. But I will happily mock you in the comments. Thanks actually. You reminded me how little an opinion means to me if it's coming from a disrespectful and/or bigoted place. At least I get to laugh through this nightmare. Edit 2. I won't be going home alone any longer. My bestie is coming with me, and I have a friend in the city I live with my spare key, and he is now in my home watching it for me. Edit 3. Since I've been asked in the comments, this really blew up. So sorry if I don't reply to you all. I am in a safe location with 2 male friends who know the whole story, and we are looking into options. I don't want to do anything hasty. A guy friend is at my home and thus far it's been quiet. I will make an update when I know more. Edit 4. No, I will not harm myself the way some of you have messaged me. For those calling themselves pro-life, you sure want me to take my own. Not very pro-life at all. And since we're on the topic, I don't want to get pregnant because I was told by my doctors that I have a high chance of passing away, even before making it to term. The child also has a high rate of mortality during the pregnancy. Essentially, we would both kick the bucket before delivery. I am ineligible for tubules or hysterectomy where I live until I turn 40, especially with my insurance, and I would never be able to afford the out-of-pocket fee. The places even still require a husband's signature as a policy. I would be open to adopting if I ever found the right person and were settled and ready. Relevant comments Aquavanatus. This isn't about you getting an abortion. This is about your ex not respecting you enough to attempt baby trapping you into a long-term relationship and/or marriage. He doesn't respect you or your choices. He lied to you about having a vasectomy. He's gaslighting you and trying to control you. You need to bring that recording to the police ASAP and file for a restraining order because your ex won't stop until he's faced with the consequences of his actions. Remain vigilant. Stay safe. OP answer. Thank you, and to everyone who's been telling me this. I am starting to feel less like I am crazy and more like I need to take action and protect myself from this guy. I think I trusted him so much. I would have happily married him. He said he didn't want kids when we met. This is all a lot, but it's helping me understand more and more that I am being played Sandbar Lakers. Everyone's saying get a lawyer ASAP. But she might not even be able to afford one. OP. Is there anyone who can go home with you? I truly have you safe. Keep us posted, and not because this is interesting, but because there are those of us who genuinely are concerned and care. OP answer. I can't afford one. I work in the arts and just would never be able to swing the costs I am seeing online. My bestie is returning home with me and I have a friend at home who is house sitting now. Mysterious. Ben 4354. Isn't the thing he did called reproductive violence? Can he be charged with rape for this? If it's possible, you should definitely go to the police and press charges against him. He's such an asshole. OP answer. This has been brought up, but it's the first I've heard of such a thing, so bestie and I are checking. Every state has its own rules, so we will see. Mine is not pro-choice friendly. Professional Zone 168. The part about him wanting you to go to church with him disturbs me. What kind of church is it? Do you think that he's being egged on by fellow church members? Please consider going to stay with a friend for a while, and then maybe with a family member or another friend after that. This dude sounds scary AF, no lie. OP answer. He goes to a mega church with a coffee shop in it, but only on holidays. I told him I did not want to participate and only went with him because he begged for Easter. It was bigger than a 90s shopping mall with a shop and everything. Update 2. I actually forgot about my post, so I apologize. I didn't even realize so many of you messaged me to check in or offer kind words. A lot happened in a short time, but I will try to make it brief. Finn came to my home again, but I was not home. When my ring came, I saw him have a total fit. He was cursing me out, calling me on the phone, and when he got my voicemail he muttered, "I'm going to fucking kill her," over and over again, and said it super loud once before walking off. I have been getting a lot of hate mail, texts, and the like calling me a murderer. My Facebook was flooded with these messages as well, and most of the profiles were people who went to Finn's church. So I sent him a text that either the harassment stops or I will post the recordings of him. All of them. The call, his threats, the texts, his voicemails. All of it. He replied, "I have been patient in my love for you, but you are being a brat." And went on to say that I need to come to my senses and meet with him, because he will no longer spoil me, and discipline needs to be introduced to our relationship, because actions have consequences. As for the rest, I will skip over a bit for the sake of brevity. My bestie said that I should go to the police, and we did, but nothing concrete has come of it yet. Something I low-key expected, honestly. It's a small little city outside a bigger, more populated one, and the small town vibes can run deep in certain circles. Many of the people go to the church Finn is at, and that includes a lot of the police department. It came to a head last week when I sent some of the recordings to his parents, who are on staff at the local mega church in the area. His mom responded and asked to meet with me, so I went with my bestie to a public spot in the city. When she met with me, she was incredibly apologetic and said that his position at the church is terminated. The staff will meet about this and decide on the full measure of consequences as his church family. She told me that she herself had an abortion before Finn was born, and her decision to do so came hugely from the fact that the father was manipulative and abusive, and she was not ready to be a mother even if she had a reliable and loving partner and co-parent. She went on to meet Finn's father and married him and had her children. She told me that she isn't sure if I had an abortion or miscarriage, but either way, I should not be harassed by Christians claiming to be pro-life. I can't explain to you the relief those words gave me, considering the vile that was messaged to me. Finn's sister reached out to me via text to share that she does not condone what her brother has been doing, and to reach out if I needed anything. Finn later was arrested for assault. I came to find out, but I don't know who he assaulted or why. just that he was taken into custody, and as he put me down as his partner, I was called to pick him up as he had been released. The running assumption is that he kept him sober up before releasing him. I didn't. I have since been looking for a new place to live as he knows my address and has come by more than a couple times. I'm staying with two of my best friends away from my town, and my home is more or less storage for my things until I find a place to move. All things considered, I am actually really happy. My friends threw me a Yeetus That Fetus party and decorated the place with the troll comments from my last post. They made a piñata with scrapped paper with his texts and that of his church pals, and instead of candy it had condoms, small bottle of lube, and paper. That was my last surprise. They pooled together a nice-sized donation to reproductive health clinic near my city, and they pledged hours to volunteer. We are taking a summer trip together to have a hot girl summer kickoff and have many things planned. The two male friends I am staying with check on my house for me and saw Finn there once and made it clear under no uncertain terms that I was protected, and that if he tries to make more trouble that actions have consequences. I have it recorded on my ring cam and it was glorious. Finn sent me a text telling me that I am a cruel witch that ruined his life and broke his heart, all because he loved me, but to not trouble myself with acting, scared of him more because he is leaving the state soon for a new job anyway. He did end the message with, I have, do, and always will love you, and perhaps one day your cold heart will melt and you can find within it your buried love for me. Like, bro, take the sugar out of your Kool-Aid because I ain't drinking it anymore. Not to say everything is sunshine and roses. I have been in a lot of therapy, and found that I overlooked a lot of red flags and have to unlearn a lot of people's pleasing behaviors to become a more confident and true version of myself. Plus, my friends don't really fully believe he is leaving town, so I am still staying with them for the time being. I love them a lot, but it's like having 4 older siblings fussing about like mother hens. I cannot wait to have my new place. Thanks to you all for the kindness and support. I think this is my last update on the matter, as I don't intend on wasting any more time than I have to on that abusive price of garbage. Remember, you know yourself best and can love yourself best. Life is too short not to make the right choices for yourself, your well-being, and your happiness, because you matter. Comments Aqua Venatus. I'm glad your ex's mother and sister are on your side, and I'm glad you have friends who are looking out for you and your safety. I know you don't want to, but keep all of the disgusting messages your ex sends you, because now that he's been charged with assault, the next time you file a police report against him, they'll have no choice but to take it seriously. Meanwhile, continue your healing process and I hope you'll have peace soon. I'm glad you're safe. Final update. Sorry, but the phrase is still funny to me. All caught up? Great. So I moved. I took a pay cut and moved to Austin. I can say that now free of worry because Finn, well, he's in prison for murder. I know a disjointed rendition of what happened. Finn got drunk out of his mind at a local bar, then shit-talked a retired Marine because the Marine spoke about his wife's abortion. I had since gotten a new job in Austin, Texas, and was moving when I heard. Finn's father asked me to testify to his character and to say my abortion caused this. I obviously didn't. I moved with only the essentials and had a wonderful summer traveling with friends. I just got back last week and am now unpacking my new home. Unrelated, but Austin is a fun freaking city. When I got back and logged on, I saw a lot of you were concerned about my safety, so I wanted to update. I'm totally okay, already have new friends, and am going to adopt possibly the cutest little senior Yorkie. I am literally in the waiting room where they will bring him out after he gets all his medical out of the way. I am also in the virtual queue for an adult Rottweiler, and it sounds like I might get her. So I may have her by the time the work week begins. Anyway, I wanted to say thanks to everyone who was supportive, and also I admit to rubbing my happiness in the face of the trolls who wished me misery. I am petty. Sue me. Ciao. Relevant comments. Lost. Advertising 232. New and happy beginnings. Cheers, OP answer. It's exciting and the people here are so sweet. For the first time in a long time, I am really looking forward optimistically. Loser swim. I feel like there were a lot of things he did that we don't see. OP probably had a hard time differentiating her post-traumatic stress disorder reactions from normal healthy reactions. He does something cruel and she can't decide if she's seeing his actions as cruel because of post-traumatic stress disorder or because he is cruel. Prestige. No love. It's weird that people are focusing on the abortion even though he raped her. Like he legit took the condom off with false pretenses, and that's one of the definitions of rape. I'm glad she's safe, but I hate that she got so much hate in the first place. Also, he is talking about how Christian he is, but he wanted a baby out of wedlock. He just wanted to control a woman's body, even though she explicitly said she didn't want kids. Salt pipe. Warner, 89. Also, a lot of people are missing some obvious points about the vasectomy. A lot of heartache could have been avoided here if OP knew that vasectomies don't work that way. He was only able to manipulate her because she didn't know the facts. So in case anyone else is reading for whom this would help, vasectomies are not really reversible. You have to sign a form acknowledging this when you get one. While there is an operation that can attempt a reversal, the success rate is low, and gets lower as time goes by. Vasectomies don't take effect immediately. It can take months until you're sterile, and there is always a follow-up check. It's not a valid form of birth control until after the check. This varies by individual, but vasectomies are generally uncomfortable. It's unlikely that someone who just had one will be up for anything for a little while. Despite being the most experienced, I was overlooked for marketing team lead, and they hired an external candidate, hurting my motivation and self-esteem. Hi everyone. It's been a few months now since this happened, but I can't get past this, and I guess I just want to get this off my chest in hopes that it'll help me get over it. Here we go. I've been working at the same company for over 6 years. The company is medium-sized, I would say, and at the time I was hired we didn't have a marketing department. With time the company grew, and after 1 year of working there, they offered to kickstart the marketing department. I accepted. For 2 years, I was the only person in the marketing department. I did everything all by myself. I knew how everything worked. I kept my numbers and quality high, and my manager even asked my boss to give me a bonus for my hard work. As the company grew, the work became too much for just one person, so they gave me a team. We were now 4 in total. I trained and pretty much led the team, but the thing is, my title never went past marketing agent. I thought that with all the things I'm doing, I'd at least get marketing manager by now. I expressed this to my manager, who said that they'll see what can be done. Months passed, my title remained the same, but then in a meeting with my manager one day, they told me that our boss is thinking that there should be a marketing team lead on the team. They said that they think it's going to be me, as I started off the department, trained everyone, have the most knowledge, and have been in the company for 6 years now. Obviously, I got excited hearing that, and I patiently waited for the boss to finally drop the news to me. The news ended up being that they were looking for a marketing team lead, and they decided to hire externally. I can't even put into words the way I felt. Even now, I still feel like I've been punched in the gut. It feels so unfair and humiliating. I was the first person in the marketing department. I have the most experience. Why would you hire someone with 0 experience instead? I asked my manager why I wasn't considered for it, and their response was basically just, "Boss just couldn't see you being a team lead." Hearing that seriously killed my self-esteem and made me feel even more humiliated. They eventually hired the person to take on the team lead role, and what made me want to slam my head against the wall is that they made me train them on everything I knew. Listen, the new team lead is a nice person, and I really don't want to hate them because it's not their fault, but my bitterness is so strong, I just don't even want to interact with them unless I need help. So now, I'm stuck being marketing agent forever, I guess. But what really drove me to write this on Reddit is the new team member. One person on the team left and was replaced with someone else, who just started last month. The team lead is on vacation, so I was the one asked to train the new hire. As I was training them, we talked and I told them a little about myself, about how I started the department and everything. And then they said, "So all that just to not be team lead?" And that honestly just pissed me off. I don't know if it's their wording, their tone, or the look of pity on their face that got to me, but I just shut down. I laughed it off, finished up with training, and just barely worked the whole day. And the day after that. Even now, I feel like my numbers are lower than usual, my quality definitely dropped, but I just can't care anymore. I know I could just quit, but this company's benefits are amazing. And I've made so many friends here that would make leaving so hard. Traveling for work every few months allowed me to see different cities and take in new experiences, but I just can't get past this, and I don't know if I ever will. I might just go through the days until I really just can't do it anymore. If you've read up until this point, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and I really hope this situation never happens to you. Edit. Hi again, everyone. I just want to thank you all for your advice. You've all been very helpful, and you've all given me the confidence to send my resume to other companies for a team lead or manager position. I'll be sending my resume to more as they pop up. The market is terrible right now, but I am pretty confident. Now I just have to act like normal in this current position until I hear from one of them. Wish me luck! For those wondering how I trained the new team lead, I did not teach them everything I knew. Hell no. I taught them enough to do their job, but when it comes to deeper knowledge, I held back. I personally just thought it was the smartest decision for me, as teaching them all I knew wouldn't have benefited me at all. It's up to my company to teach them everything else, not keep relying on me. When I was asked to train the new hire, I did mention that I shouldn't train them if we have a team lead. But boss hit back saying that I would be responsible if the team fell behind if we waited until the team lead got back from vacation. I didn't want to cause stress for the rest of the team and myself, so I, stupidly, complied. I did consider threatening to leave if I didn't get the team lead role, but I held back because I was afraid of the response LOL. I was afraid they would have just let me go and I'd be left unemployed without a backup job, especially considering the job market right now. But I guess my pride also played a part in it. I really wanted to be given the team lead role because they believed in me, wanted to give it to me, not because I threatened them. I also do quite like my job, so I thought I could suck it up, but it's really not worth the mental suffering. Huge thanks again for reading my ramblings. Have a great one, guys. Update: so, I got a job as marketing team lead. Just finished week 3. The market is rough right now, but I'm glad I didn't give up and just kept applying. My new job's a little challenging, but my mental health is in a better place now knowing I could finally, fully let go of that grudge. If you're in a similar situation, don't lose hope. When I gave in my notice, I would pay just to see the look on my boss's face again when I told them I was leaving for a marketing team lead job. They tried to match the salary match, but I declined. They asked what they could do to keep me, but I kept it polite and just said that it was time for me to experience more in a different role now. I could tell they were really pissed, but I couldn't care less LOL. And then apparently they talked smack about me to the manager, that I was betraying them and all that BS. It's so embarrassing LMAO. Of course, before I left, I asked my manager what I needed to improve on to be a better team lead so I can do even better in my new role. I was told things like, be a little more strict, have more confidence, and other things I made sure to write down to work on. And I know it's been months, but I still wanted to ask again why I was passed up the promotion at this company. So apparently it's because they made it so that the team lead did more admin work. More team reports, team evaluations, team decisions and coming up with new procedures, and less marketing. Apparently, since I'm the most senior with consistent results, they didn't want to lose that by making me team lead. So they figured keeping me as a marketing agent was the smartest move for the company. I fully understand their decision, but screw that LMAO. I feel like I'm actually doing what a team lead should be doing in my new company, and that's all I really wanted. It just feels like they're still trying to figure out what a team lead should do, and I'm not willing to stick around for that again. Thank you again everyone for encouraging me to look for another job. I got way too comfortable in my last job that I allowed them to walk all over me. You aren't handcuffed to a certain company forever. It's okay to leave when you feel there's no more growth for you. Have a great one, everyone. We couldn't save our 15-year marriage because my wife friend-zoned me and wants a platonic companionship. My wife, 35F, and I, 35M, have been married for 15 years and we've been together for 20 years. We have 2 kids, 12, 14. We absolutely adore and work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a ton of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll that can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little sex, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much. We essentially became roommates co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It was to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individualized therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped some. Little by little we started to get along and started to have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she no longer was in love with me, and that she only saw me as a best friend. That she only loved me in a very platonic way. And this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy and let alone sex. This was very shocking to me, and quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I felt completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart and began to ask questions about where the root of this problem lies, and her answer was, I don't know, and that, I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from. As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, I'm frustrated, and I do not know what to do at this point. Currently, We've arrived at a place where she says that she has no sex drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do, or what is it about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response is always, I don't know. She stated that she does love me, but it's not the same. That she has been feeling disconnected for years and that our marriage just takes up too much work. Her focus is only the children for now, and that my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss, and I'm mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like at this point I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means with companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. In regard to intimacy and/or sex, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to have sex or be intimate by drinking or smoking is good, and I declined to be a part of that, which to my surprise, it upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, socials, etc. And we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, it was clean. We've always been very forward, even with the hard topics, so I don't smell or feel any foul play or infidelity. Am I wrong for declining to only be intimate or have sex when she's intoxicated? I'm firm on my stance of not partaking in this only when I'm high or drunk sex, because it doesn't sit well with me. I do not know how to help our situation, and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young and healthy individuals and good looking. We both have good standing careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. My wife of 15 plus years is no longer in love with me and doesn't know why, and now says she can only have sex while intoxicated, or I need to settle for a platonic sexless marriage, and she doesn't know why that is, but it is what it is, and I'm in need of insight or advice. Relevant comments. Missing reasons. Commenters looked at his history and found they were swingers. We did some swinging in the past. That was fun for some time. We mutually decided to stop doing it, and we have established it's not the case. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we did disclose with our couple therapist and made sure to include it to make sure we're not neglecting an obvious potential issue. I will say, I did ask my wife if what she experienced during swinging is something that is affecting her view on our relationship, and she said it wasn't. Our swinging experience was always together, and it was very sex-driven. Nothing really emotional or poly. Truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very forward and never afraid of dealing things head-on, no matter how painful. If this is a consequence of swinging, this issue existed long before the lifestyle. I agree that swinging wasn't a solution in the end. Never was meant to be. It was more of discovering or exploring if she felt any different. If that was the case, we agreed we would talk about it, and if we arrive at the conclusion that myself is the problem and she has no problem with other men, we would part ways amicably. However, this wasn't the case. She didn't like sex or intimacy there either. She was very much in control of that whole swinging situation. And yes, I went along with it. What gives? It felt very organic, and it was her effort, if you will, to discover more and learn more about our current issue. I saw it as a means of learning if I'm the problem, and was very much ready to accept that. It turns out it wasn't the case. 6 years of misery sound awful. I would very much hate that. OP on if this started when the swinging ended. Finally, a comment on the swinging topic with actual insight. You're absolutely right about the fact that the swinging experience had changes that will impact our marriage and lives forever. For example, the best thing swinging taught us, even above sexual exploration, was the level of transparent and open communication it requires. We would literally have mental orgasms having dialogue with such intentionality. We implemented that in all our lives and areas, including parenting with our children. She even agrees that we're thankful for that takeaway from our swinging. Honestly, I cannot stress it enough with people here. Yes, we explored swinging, however it was actually a positive experience. When we decided to stop, it was because it felt natural and organic to just do so. In fact, we met with that couple who we meshed super well with the night before. We actually enjoyed the actual friendship and even spent time as vanilla friends. So it wasn't because of something negative. Wife mentioned that it certainly wasn't any better, and since she's not enjoying the sex, we both agreed there's no point to this. I agreed and we moved on, and we're still friends with those people because it's great. All that said, I know, more often than not, swinging causes massive issues. However, this was something we explored in pursuit of a solution to an issue that was present way before. I think of it as taking a practical approach to trying to solve the problem. Update 1. I wanted to give you guys an update of how the therapy session with my wife went this week. Not sure if this is helpful or not, but I took many of the responses / comments / suggestions from my initial post and put together some things I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues that may be affecting this situation. One of the main things that is the buzzword of this has been the term resentment, and it has been really eating me up inside knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or doesn't know why this is affecting her emotionally, mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long, 15 years, and being together since we were 14 years old. Our long history of growing up and how having children when she was 19 years old, me 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising babies, 2 kids now ages 12 and 14. She followed up with tons of questions directly, mostly from my wife about her feelings towards this, and 90% of the responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying yes it sucked, because she would feel guilt or shame because it would imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside of the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually, and it was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we did miss out on many things in life. She also was very clear in saying, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how siloed and isolated we've been, again busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life. Especially when you have similar peers that can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating, and even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids, even though she's always been someone who needs that external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session, I started to feel like there was a common denominator, the kids, in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young? I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes 2 to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct and very forward in asking my wife what her plan is moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that should my wife say the same thing about being a co-parenting roommate, that I would take the 180 approach and essentially do me. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate or sexual with me as of now, and that she loves me immensely and she feels bad for not being there for me, as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which for the 50th time said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach for a solution to a problem that was very much in existence when we tried this. We both really have no issue with this. We know it happened. We tried it and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, and really we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root for resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I will not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can and that this issue really has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or requires me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct and said that I will not be accepting this dynamic and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions, and is very much interested in maintaining an active intimacy and sexual relationship. I expressed how I'm not going to be a convenience and that there was more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knows I love her dearly and that I do want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage so long as she is as well, and that if she wasn't, it's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce. However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues, that divorce will be the only outcome. Of course, tears were involved, and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still, nothing was said, and I walked out very discouraged and very determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short and cold and transactional. The saddest part is realizing this dynamic already is very cold and transactional. Here's where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor her roommate co-parent dynamic without reproach, and that it should be no mistake that I'm not happy here and I am never going to be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and started to basically focus on myself. Very short and transactional. She asked for help on some of her personal things, to which I declined, and it really shocked her. She was upset, saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day and we only spoke when necessary. Few days I keep this going and she's very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. That night she was crying, telling me she's stressed and she thinks something is wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened. Then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed and that I'm simply, much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie. It has been very hard to be cold and distant because, as I mentioned before, I love her and I wish I could hold her and love on her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way, just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone. So I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180, and let's just say, there has been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50, and she lost her shit. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, hey, friends go in 50-50, and as your friend I expect nothing less. This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of how I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyway and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for and that it's still a bargain, because she would have to be 100% if she was on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very much sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realization that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often, and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she'd pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased seeing her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very much cordial and amicable even to this day, and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set and expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this unbiased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a sexless, intimacy-less marriage because we both deserve better. Thank you all for all the kind words and recommendations and feedback. This will be my last post on this topic, and I wish you all the best. TLDR. My wife friend-zoned me once to just co-parent at my expense, but I started the 180 method to try and find a solution because she doesn't want to work on us, which seems to be working on getting her out of her rut and helping me discover more about how she feels. Also, therapy is paramount and highly recommended to all couples. Relevant comments. Comment 1. So, I'm going to assume that your wife has a lucrative job and you are both going 50-50 on childcare, as you both work and share children. Because otherwise, this approach is just plain financially abusive, and if you're planning on saying I won't pay the bills unless you have sex with me, sexually abusive as well. Assuming that is the case and you aren't a total POS, I'm actually interested in how this works out for you. I feel like I'm in an unstated, similar situation. We both work and have blended finances, but we don't go to bed together or eat together, have barely any intimacy, a kiss or two, hugs every couple days, and spend maybe 8 hours a week together, Just the three of us, him, me, and the toddler. Even less, just the two of us. Maybe 3 hours a week. Otherwise, he is on his game, or out playing sports, watching YouTube, or whatever else he does. It barely feels like a friend situation, let alone a marriage. I'm curious how she handles it, as the spouse that presumably was pulling away first. I hope you keep us updated. OP, yes, we both have degrees, good careers, and while I make significantly more money, her salary is very proficient and above average. The 50-50th was not to cripple nor hurt her financially, that is cruel, but mostly to send a message on what a roommate dynamic looks like in the real world. I really dislike how people immediately jump to conclusions about the finances as a way of manipulating her. It's not the case at all. Plenty of money left over after bills. However, 50-50th means she has less whatever money, and the understanding that roommates share everything equally. Prior to this 180 approach, we did everything together and with our kids. We always saw ourselves as a unit that does things together, both alone and with the kids too. That's changed now, where I'm choosing to focus on more independent types of pastimes and focus. That is what has sparked her reaction and realization of there's more than just roommates here. Comment 2. How does one dump half of the household expenses on the other person if they share a bank account? Or are your finances kept separately? Just curious how this would work if applied to my life. OP, excellent question. We shared everything. The proposed 50-50th was suggesting we place the necessary amount to pay bills in the same account, and any leftover money can be deposited to a new account. I think this is why she was very upset. She felt a huge loss of control knowing she won't be able to monitor my finances. Also, she felt a huge loss in her leftover money with this arrangement and saw that I would keep significantly more of my own. This is still being worked out because I think she is calling my bluff here, but my plan is to notify her next week as I modify my direct deposit and open a new account. It will definitely be more real there. To be clear, for all the trolls here, yes, she will have less leftover money after responsibilities, and it's still enough to live on. Example, for reference. Assume I make $3,000 a month, she makes $1,000 a month. Responsibilities are $1,000 a month. So she'd contribute $500 and I would contribute $500. Where before she would contribute only $250. This is the last comment I'll add regarding money and finances. She's fine and she's not hurting. I promise, when asked what if she leaves for another man, interesting. She has no shortage of men hitting on her, and we're by no means jealous people. So I've witnessed this multiple times, and her reactions are somewhat indifferent. I will say, if another man for her was the answer, she'd tell me, or she'd have some inkling maybe. There's no telling, but I think the problem is deeper than superficial attention from a different person. You might be right, and if this is the case, so be it. However, I'll live with peace knowing I left no stone left unturned. Crazy thought, I know I would be disappointed and saddened if she did leave for another man that would accept the bare minimum. But I'd also feel at peace knowing it's not all my fault. I know I'm responsible in some way to some degree. That's just marriage. I know sadness and depression will creep, but we'll both overcome. But if this does happen, at least there will be clear reasons and clarity as to why it did. Also, I know for a fact that she wouldn't cheat. We're both very blunt, open, and transparent. She would definitely tell me that she wants to step out on our marriage before it actually happens. As would I. We owe ourselves this respect for each other, and we actively practice it. New update. I debated for a long time on whether to submit an update on this matter. A few significant changes have taken place, and I felt it would be good to not only share with you, but also to allow myself to process all of this in a uniform way. We're now almost 9 weeks in on the 180 method I mentioned I was starting, and it started to render some positive reactions from my wife. I explained in the previous post that she started to notice things that she previously took for granted, started to ask more about my whereabouts, and also started to notice I would go out with the kids more often without her, and she started to invite herself, to which I didn't decline. So much has changed, and it has changed for what seems to be for the better. This past Memorial Day weekend, my wife asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee because she wanted to talk to me about something. This was huge, because I can't recall the last time my wife asked to talk to me about something important. I must admit, I was very nervous and worried about what this could be about, and my mind was racing with the plethora of scenarios of what it could possibly be. Of course I agreed, and we took some time away from the kids to have this conversation at a local coffee shop. The talk was very constructive in nature. There was a ton of insightful information about herself that helped me further understand where she is in life, both emotionally and mentally. We summarized what the core issues we are encountering are, and she asked me for help. This is new, and I cannot tell you how excited I was to hear something so sincere coming from my wife, who for the last 2+ years has been absent. So after she was through sharing all her thoughts, I proposed a plan that I felt was right for us. This is something that I had been thinking about these last few weeks, and I was planning on bringing this up in a few months if I noticed that things were not changing for the better. This date felt like the right place to share it since it goes hand in hand with what she talked about, and it also relates to the help she was asking me for. I started by first acknowledging her feelings and her concerns. I told her they are valid and how she feels is personal to her, and that I care that she feels this way because I don't like the thought of her being sad or depressed. I also told her that my goal still is and will always be for us to reconcile and be the happily ever after we vowed to be for each other, and that my love for her is as strong, if not stronger, as it was the day we said I do. I continued the conversation by telling her how I felt about the whole situation, read my previous posts for details, and how it affects me every day. I also clarified some things that she mentioned she was feeling because I have been very distant and monotone, transactional, lately. I explained to her that I was very much trying to protect my feelings and emotions from the rejection and neglect, and that it wasn't personal. It was simply me safeguarding myself because I cannot control her, I can only control myself. This was a perfect segue way to the core of this approach, which is focused on self-accountability. I told her that for the longest time I was always working hard to make her happy and do things that I knew she enjoyed or wanted. However, I was always met with rejection and disappointment, which caused a load of stress on me. I explained to her that I had to make a change for myself. After all, I can only control myself and make the changes that I want for myself. I mentioned how I was starting to implement new habits and routines that help edify me all while still executing all of our shared responsibilities, including parenting, finances, and daily living activities. I explained that the goal is to continue to improve myself both as a husband and father, learn more, and be healthier, among other things. She was very receptive to this. She told me that she sees what I'm doing and that she is proud of the changes she has seen. She also told me how she's starting to realize that she feels left behind and that much of the things that have affected her negatively are her own fault. Toward the end of the conversation, which was about 3 hours, there was a very high spirit of reconciliation in the room. I told her that my goal is to ultimately make this work. However, I was very clear that I was not going to live under the current circumstances. I told her that my heart wants her to be happy even if it means elsewhere, and that I also deserve to be happy myself. I also explained that I do not want our children to grow up thinking this was okay or normal because they deserve better as well. She told me she doesn't either. She told me she doesn't know what to do, to which I replied, let's set some clear goals. However, the goals will be for ourselves, not for each other. So here is what we established. We are in charge of our own happiness. The key here is that she's not responsible for making me happy, and vice versa. We both need to seek what that personal plan looks like individually. Also, we're both encouraged to include each other in taking those steps if we want, but it is not required. We are in control of our own individual lives and our own journey. This means we're both responsible for finding the resources necessary to grow, change, and heal. We can definitely help one another when help is requested. However, unsolicited advice or help will not be rendered. We are responsible for communicating. This ensures nothing is left unsaid. If it was never brought up or discussed, it never happened. We're not mind readers, and we need to take ownership when we fail to communicate. Make a list of needs and wants. This gives us both clear directions about meeting each other's needs. This also gives us a choice as to what we want, choose to do, compromise on, or decline to do. This list also will not serve as a checklist for accountability. We made it clear we would not be bringing this list up for the purpose of arguing. And it was up to the other person to use the list as a tool for growth, transparency, or clarification. We concluded that it was up to us to decide if we will be happy doing these things for ourselves because we care, not to simply check a box. This was very important in order to establish long-term habits and not short-term band-aids, because you cannot make someone change or do something they don't believe is important. Established a deadline, Memorial Day 2025. At the end of the conversation, we concluded by setting Memorial Day 2025 as a hard stop to evaluate our lives and our progress. We agreed we would do this with the clear understanding that we will independently decide if we are happy here. If we determine we aren't happy, we will be getting a divorce. We would also both assume full responsibility for what happened should we get divorced. For example, if needs were not met, it would mean my partner chose not to meet them. This places full responsibility on each other in all areas. The whole process requires that if needs were not met, the next question should be, did we do everything to address this issue? If yes, then we will have a clear conscience of what transpired and know we left no stone unturned. If, however, we didn't do everything to address the issue, it will mean the issue was not important enough for you or didn't care to meet those needs. This goes both ways in all areas, like everything else. We established that the main motivator for change should be ourselves, and that if we did that, we would in turn begin to see beneficial changes towards each other. The goal is to ensure that everything we are doing for one another to meet each other's needs is being done because we want to do it for our spouse, not because she asked. Instead, it was done because I know it makes him/her happy and I love seeing them happy. I felt it was important to mention to her that we are no longer required to do anything for each other. It is now more of a I want to do these things for each other. Ultimately, I felt the conversation was very positive and productive. Many tears were shed and lots of hugging ensued. I know this doesn't mean or guarantee anything. However, this has never happened before and I can honestly attribute it to the 180 method. I cannot give any more insight on this method other than it's the only thing I did differently and something new happened for what seems to be better. I've decided I will conclude and will refrain from this method moving forward as the plan now has changed. I'm planning to devote myself entirely to not only myself and my growth but to also work on her needs and wants because I want her to be happy by my side. She said and agreed she would do the same for herself. We agreed we would help and build each other wherever we request for it and that we will be approaching this as a team. As of today, some of the biggest changes I have noticed are her commitment to therapy and mental health. She is taking some antidepressants that are helping her. She is also more confident and in a far better mood more frequently. We have started to explore more ways of intimacy in multiple areas such as physical touch and words of affirmation. Sex is starting to make an appearance, which is exciting. Side note, sex was very awkward to start when you've been abstinent for so long. We've also started to work out together, which is great, and have lost weight, which is also very exciting. Overall, communication has improved, and I cannot wait to see where this leads. I hope this helps someone out there. I'm still very much interested in your feedback and thoughts on this. You all have been a huge help in giving me hope and insight into this tough journey. Trolls aside, many of you have really been instrumental in my journey both emotionally and mentally. I will not be providing any more updates until Memorial Day next year. I think it's now time to keep focusing on myself and start working on all the new opportunities that hopefully will arise with my wife. I wish you all the best in life and your relationships with those you love. TLDR, our marriage took a turn for the better after the 180 method and we're now working on ourselves, each other, and rekindling our marriage. We also set a deadline for next year to either remain together or get divorced.